Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District Board of Trustees for Thursday, September 1, 2022 at 6:31 p.m. A quorum of the board is physically present at the AISD Central Office to conduct this meeting. Board meetings are open to the public based on space availability to ensure social distancing and the health and safety of our community and staff. This meeting is now streaming live on AISD TV and Apple TV. It's also being broadcast on cable channel 22 through Spectrum, Astound Broadband, and on channel 99 through AT&T UVerse. Closed captioning in English is available on these platforms for individuals who are deaf or hard of hearing. And to our audience tuning in remotely and here in person, welcome and thank you for joining us. I just wanted to note that we had a little bit of technical difficulty with AISD TV, which is why we're starting just a little bit later. We will now move to the approval of the agenda. Secretary Singh, do you have a motion to approve the agenda?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion by Secretary Singh and a second by Trustee Anderson to approve the agenda, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes by all those on the dais. Secretary Singh, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance and the pledge to the Texas flag?
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Juro lealtad a la bandera de los Estados Unidos de América y a la república que representa una nación bajo Dios, indivisible, con libertad y justicia para todos. Honor the Texas flag. I pledge allegiance to thee, Texas, one state, under God, one and indivisible. Honro a la bandera de Texas. Te juro lealtad, Texas. Un estado bajo Dios, único e indivisible.
Thank you, trustees. Dr. Mays, would you please share our first recognition tonight, beginning with the Back to School Bash?
Sure. We have Ms. Michelle Wallace, our Executive Director, that will be sharing our recognitions tonight.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. Good evening, President Rodriguez and trustees. I am here tonight to ask for formal recognition of AISD's 2022 Back to School Bash sponsors and Office Depot Start Proud program. First, we will recognize our Bash sponsors, including our Ed Fund annual sponsors, and then we'll recognize Office Depot Start Proud program. This year's Back to School Bash, including Ed Fund annual sponsors, was made possible by Austin ISD staff and community members, and we're so grateful. I want to especially recognize Christina Burbank from our Department of Communications and Community Engagement, who led this effort. We're grateful to the following sponsors, many of whom are here in person tonight. Our Ed Fund annual sponsors supported this event, and that includes HEB, Wells Fargo. I know Chris Rios is here tonight. Thank you. And as I call your name, if you would come up and stand behind me, that would be great. A+ Federal Credit Union, Zenda Bennett is here with us tonight. ACR Engineering, Ricardo Troncoso is here tonight. Marion and Chris Casey, Amy and Ken Jones, and Barbara and Bart Neggs. And then our partner sponsors, Austin Public Works, Safe Routes to School, Capital Metro. Here with us tonight, we have Jesse Marroquin and Kelsey Lammy. The Colony Park Neighborhood Association, Dell Children's Health Plan, the DJ Bling Foundation, Lock Arms for Life, Austin Public Health, Randolph Brooks Federal Credit Union, and I know Robert Rodriguez is here tonight from Randolph Brooks, Texas Mutual Insurance Company. And our community sponsors, Austin Community College, Dahlia Enzaldua Torres is here, and Misan Zuniga is here with us from ACC. Cross Texas Transmission, Dell Children's Medical Center Kids in Cars, and Urban Air Adventure Park, South Austin. And special thanks to the AISD Warehouse, Austin Energy, Paul Mitchell Austin, and Safe Routes to School. Trustees, now it is my pleasure to request formal recognition for the Back to School Bash sponsors.
Thank you. Trustee Zapata, do you have a recognition statement to share?
Yes, sir. On behalf of the Austin ISD Board of Trustees, it is my honor to recognize the 2022 Back to School Bash sponsors for their support and commitment to students and families. For the last 18 years, Austin ISD departments have collaborated with countless community partners and local organizations to coordinate the annual Back to School Bash, which provides an engaging opportunity for AISD students and families to discover important resources that will help pave the way for a successful school year. This year's event was finally held in person on Saturday, August 6th. It was such a wonderful experience to witness the students and families from across the city reconnecting with and reconnecting with the community. With the support of our generous partners, Austin ISD was able to distribute backpacks and school supplies to nearly 47% of the students who qualify for free or reduced meals, which means nearly 18,000 Austin ISD students received backpacks in addition to ESSER funding that was reallocated to support this project. Our partners also pledged a combined amount of $35,500 in sponsorships and donated in-kind gifts, which included backpacks, school supplies, dental kits, bus passes, booster seats, and much more. Finally, many partners and staff volunteered countless hours to prepare and support back-to-school events and as across the district. These types of partnerships are to be commended. It is with great pride that the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District recognizes and thanks all 2022 Back to School Bash sponsors for their partnership and students and families. Thank you.
Thank you all very much for your support of public education. We appreciate you. Dr. Mays, would you please share our next recognition, Office Depot Start Proud?
Actually, Michelle Wallace will be recognizing them one more time for us. Thank you.
Thank you. We're excited to recognize our special partnership with Office Depot's Start Proud program. Office Depot stepped up its support this year, providing support to students and teachers. And man, we had a party too, didn't we, Trustee Foster? Okay. I'd like our friends from Office Depot, as they do, they brought a party with them tonight. So if you're still here, Logan Brown is here, Patty Salinas, Chris Pena, Jeanette Martinez, and Chris Brown. We're grateful that you made time to be here tonight. Trustees, now I'd like to request recognition for Office Depot Start Proud program.
Thank you. Trustee Foster, do you have a recognition statement to share?
Absolutely. So on behalf of the Austin ISD Board of Trustees, it is my honor to recognize Office Depot's Start Proud program for its support of AISD students and teachers. In 2018, Office Depot launched their philanthropic community investment program called #DepotDifference, and Austin ISD has been generously impacted ever since. They do work across the country, but here in Austin, Office Depot has now donated 5,000 well-stocked backpacks to Austin ISD students and dozens of pallets of classroom supplies to teachers and staff. And when we were at Guerrero Thompson for this big beginning of school celebration, there were so many red shirts. All these Office Depot folks had come out by the dozens. I don't know if it was 30 or 50. And I think they really enjoy. I think we have teacher recruits among this crowd. They hyped up the kids, just loved on the kids. They had the kids coming in class by class, and they were coming through like a high five tunnel. And one of your Office Depot guys was like the best hype man ever. He was like, "Are you ready to have a great day at school?" The kids were like, "Yeah." They had a DJ. It was a great day. You also had Office Depot models. They had a big reveal where the curtains spread and tons of backpacks. And all these Office Depot folks came out and were modeling their backpacks and wares, and the kids were going absolutely wild. It was such a wonderful way to start the school year at Guerrero Thompson. But I know you also support Pecan Springs and have been doing this work. Trustees, not to start anything, but you want this crew to be in one of your schools next year as they do this at a different school each year for the last several years. So, all students received backpacks and school supplies. An all-star teacher was awarded a special surprise package, and that was like watching the Showcase Showdown thing, where at the end of Price is Right, you get to see the stuff. A teacher came up who received this award, and she had a table full of laptops, printers. It was just amazing to recognize an amazing teacher. Currently, fundraising is also underway, as I understand, or I'm not sure if it's over yet, but when folks go to Office Depot and they make a donation at the checkout, that's going to this fund. Is that correct? So this is an ongoing effort. So it is with great pride that the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District recognizes and thanks Office Depot Start Proud for their partnership and support of Austin ISD students and teachers. Thank you so much.
Trustees, thank you for making time for this recognition, both of these, and thanks to the crew at Guerrero Thompson, too, for supporting this event, and Ryan O'Donnell on our team for all the back-end work to make it happen.
Thank you all very much. And I think I heard a request from Trustee Foster that next year we need that for the Board of Trustees meeting. A little hype in a tunnel.
I've invited them out to more schools. I told them, I said, we don't have to stop at just 2. It's like, we could do more.
There you go. Thank you all very much. Trustees, for tonight's president report, I would like to, actually 2 things. One, just for a point of clarification, today is September 1st, and just because of some scheduling issues, today's meeting is actually the August board voting meeting, just for clarification purposes. And then secondly, I'm going to turn over the president's report to Trustee Letitia Anderson to share a statement on behalf of the Austin ISD Board regarding the recent passing of a beloved AISD administrator. Trustee Anderson.
On July 23, 2022, the city of Austin lost a true force of love and light with the passing of Dorothy Houston Aribo. Dr. Aribo became the first Black female administrator of an AISD high school when she was named principal of LBJ High School. Dr. Aribo will always be remembered as a fair and loving administrator who knew the value of creating and sustaining a positive school climate by building a warm and trusting relationship with her students, staff, and colleagues through her signature greeting of "Hi, love." After retirement in 1992, Houston Tillotson College, her alma mater, bestowed her with an honorary Doctor of Humane Letters degree, officially titling her Dr. Dorothy H. Aribo. On the behalf of the Board of Trustees of the Austin Independent School District, we wish to honor the memory of Ms. Aribo, Dr. Aribo, for her 32 years of dedicated service to AISD students as an English teacher, Dean of Girls, Assistant Principal, and Principal of LBJ High School. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Anderson. I would ask our trustees just for a moment of silence in honor. Thank you again, Trustee Anderson, for the recognition. Trustees, at this time, we would like to provide committee reports. Trustee Ashe, can you share the policy report and the report for the Austin Education Fund?
Certainly. I will start with the Policy Committee report. We met on Tuesday, August 9th with trustees Foster and Boswell and myself. Also present from administration were Dr. Jacob Reach, Edna Butts, and Leslie Stevens. We additionally, AISD parent Lisa Flores was in attendance. The committee discussed EHBAF local, which is the policy around video and audio monitoring. And we are going to be considering clarifications to this policy regarding what classrooms qualify for cameras, appeals, and who may view the videos and related issues at the September meeting of the policy committee We also discussed DC local, which is employment practices. And it's something that we have spoken about as a board regarding at what level the board approves hires. And we are still in discussion on that one, and we will be bringing further updates. The next policy we discussed was DGB local, and this was in response, it's around employee rights and privileges, personnel management relations, and it's about our consultation agent. And this is in response to what we heard and have heard for quite some time about increasing voice and the ability to have as many voices heard as possible. And following the equity by design, we are looking and considering making changes that would allow any association that represents 15% or more of either classified staff and or non-supervisory professional employees to give more voice to more employees. We're still under discussion and in discussion with those entities themselves. We also discussed FNCA local, which has to do with the dress code, and it will be on the board's agenda in September, and it amends the dress code to allow hairstyles of any length and style. And we have requested that staff come back to the committee in September with a similar amendment to FFH local to state that discrimination based on hairstyles is prohibited, which is in response to the Crown Act that some people may be familiar with. There are 3 new policies that are a part of the TASB, Texas Association of School Boards Update 119, that are on the board's agenda tonight, and they were also on the preview agenda, and they're there because they have August deadlines for adoption. So that's DMA local, which is a new policy to comply with legislation passed last session requiring the board to annually review SBEC's professional development clearinghouse and approve the district's professional development plan. It also updates EHB Local, which requires the district to provide regular training opportunities for teachers of students with dyslexia to meet TEA policy requirements for the ongoing TEA Special Education Cyclical Monitoring Review. And the third is EHBAA Local, which requires the district to ensure that a student who is transitioning from early childhood intervention, often called ECI, has an IEP or an individualized education plan developed and implemented by the child's third birthday to meet with the TEA policy requirements for ongoing TEA special education cyclical monitoring reviews. So that's a bunch of legal words that we are required to have in our policies for clarification as it pertains to those three. There will be additional policies that are going to be coming back to us from the TASB 119 update, but they did not have the August deadline, and so we're going to be discussing those additional policies at our next meeting, which is going to take place on September 12th. And there were additional policies of BDF local and BE local that we will also be looking at that we needed to postpone until this coming meeting. And that completes my policy committee report. And then do you want me to just move straight into the Austin Ed Fund?
Yes.
So Austin Ed Fund, the Ed Fund members were excited to welcome Dr. Mays to the board at our last meeting on August the 18th. And at that meeting, the Ed Fund board celebrated the recent grant process where 52 projects were funded across the district, totaling, everybody hang on to your seats, $300,000. And the board also accepted its annual financial audit and heard a presentation on the AISD bond from Mr. Segura, Mr. Ramos, and Mr. Stanford. The Ed Fund is hosting Austin ISD's Principal for a Day event on September 28th, where business and community leaders can experience a day in the life of an Austin ISD campus from the eyes of a principal. This is the second time that they've done that. Ms. Wallace, I hope I'm saying that correctly if she's still in here. I believe they did this last year as well. It went over very well. And is a rather eye-opening experience for those who may not have had the opportunity to be on campus and experience what principals deal with every day. And with that, I'm going to send a little shout out to all of our principals as we're getting ready to start, I believe, or we're halfway through the third week of school. Thank you to all of you for all you have done for our kids. The Austin Ed Fund's Inspire the Future Luncheon will take place on October 25th. I'm going to say it again because now all of the board members, everybody out in the audience can write it down on their calendars, October 25th. And we hope that everyone will join us for this celebration of Austin ISD. It is really fun. I will tell you, I've attended them every year, and actually even previous years before I was on the board. And there is always tons of student representation. There's almost always a drum line. I'm a big fan of a drum line. I love drum lines. There's always student performances of some kind. It is a celebration of all of the wonderful things in AISD. And it is also, the luncheon is the largest fundraising event for supporting the grants program that I just talked about. And I'm going to take the opportunity to say that just funded $300,000 worth of projects. So to learn more or consider a sponsorship of this year's event, please visit www.austinedfund.org. And in recognition of the challenges faced by our campuses over the last several years, the St. David's Foundation awarded the Austin Ed Fund $60,000 to support beginning of the year gatherings and celebrations to boost morale and allow for informal relationship building, community building among Austin ISD campus communities. This support in the form of gift cards was delivered to campus principals during the week of August 8th, and a special thanks to the St. David's Foundation for this support. And that concludes my report.
Thank you very much, Trustee Ashe. Trustee Boswell, can you share the intergovernmental committee report?
Yes, happy to do that. Yes, I'm happy to do that. Thank you. The board's Intergovernmental Relations Committee convened a meeting on August 4th. Trustees Zapata, Singh, and I were present, and from the administration we had Dr. Jacob Reach and Edna Butts. And we reviewed some legislative priorities. If you might remember that we adopted our legislative priorities related to school funding in June, and we're looking at additional priorities. So we discussed priorities that had already been adopted by 2 other school districts, by 3 education-related associations and some other entities. And then we went deeper into discussion about several different issues. The first was parental choice. We discussed describing what the law already offers parents, what we do in the district, how parents are currently involved in children's education. And we also discussed a possible position that is in our fiscal priorities, but also adding it as a parental choice issue, that as a board, we want to discuss parental choice not involving providing vouchers to attend private schools, not subject to the same laws as public schools. We talked about safety and mental health. One, encouraging the states to allow school districts flexibility to determine how to spend funds appropriated through the school safety allotment to include the funds used for mental health as one option, with community control of those funds. Committee also discussed funding for employees who could perform some non-counseling duties performed by counselors to allow counselors more time to spend on direct services to students, exploring loan forgiveness as for counselors, providing a cost of living stipend to students who teach or intern in district schools and don't have the benefits afforded to college students, perhaps for student teachers. Who often don't have scholarship money available in that last semester as they're working. So really looking at some pipeline issues and things that we might be able to do to advocate for more mental health counselors, more teachers in that. We also talked about engaging, as we're looking ahead to the remainder of our priorities, making sure the community has a voice in that process. You can find online right now at austinisd.org/legislative a form that will let you rank your top 5 priorities from a list that we have considered, and you can write your own in. We hope that you'll participate in that. The deadline for that is September 6th. We'll be meeting on September 7th to look at what the community has shared with us as we continue shaping priorities to bring to the board in October at our regular meeting. And then one additional thing we discussed is the possibility of an advocacy advisory body. The committee would like to recommend a board-appointed advocacy advisory body with parents, business and community members, teachers, administrators, students, and others with an interest in these issues to work with the board to help us amplify our reach with legislative work and help us shape our priorities, and then go out into the community and work with us to make sure we can do more than the 9 of us can do alone. So we'll be bringing that to the board as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Boswell. As board president, I also serve as the co-chair of the District Safety and Security Committee, and along with Dr. Twyla Williams as the other co-chair. As required by a recent order of the governor, the committee held a special meeting on Friday, August 12th, prior to the start of the school year. And the committee discussed the opening of the year safety items, including a discussion on access control, communication protocol, drills and responses, portable safety, and the emergency response plan for the district. The next meeting of the Safety and Security Committee is being scheduled in September, and additional information can be found on the committee webpage at austinisd.org/advisory-bodies/SSSC. Trustees, are there any other committee or training reports to share tonight? I think the one thing I just want to share is just a sense of gratefulness and thankfulness for all of the work. I hope the community recognizes that this board did not take a break from the May meeting to now, and has been focused not just on our $2.44 billion bond package, but also all these other important governance issues around policy, intergovernmental affairs, and safety, school safety. So I really appreciate all the work that our colleagues have been doing over the summer. The next item is under the President's report. Dr. Mays?
Sure, if someone, I don't know, if Jacob's driving for me. I do want to say good evening to everybody. And again, thank you to the trustees for staying on with us all summer long and moving the work forward. We know that this is a sacrifice, and again, you all are volunteers, so we appreciate you. I also wanted to double down on that Principal for a Day. We did pilot that last year, and I think that it truly provides community members with insight I've done Principal for a Day for a number of years, and I think, again, when we talk about transparency, I think you get a whole lot of transparency when you come and you spend half a day with us on the campus. And so I encourage everybody within the community that's interested in transparency, sign up. I do want to say the best part of my job is, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Jacob. Thank you. Is visiting campuses. I really get a chance to have fun when I go to the campuses and hang out with the kids and our students. And so this week, I got a chance to go over and spend time with Principal Mejia at Gus Garcia and participate in our tying ceremony. And so over there at the Leadership Academy, and again, we had a great time. I also got to visit new Principal Chara Harris over at Murchison to really just sit down and listen to the challenges that we're having with flooding over there. And I think that it was important for myself, and actually Chief Snead got a chance to make his way over there with me, along with Trustee Ashey, just to walk that campus and hear some of the challenges that we see with our flooding situation there. I got a chance to also visit Campbell Elementary with Principal Keith Moore, and so we had a good time over there. And I also got a chance to visit with Dr. Bedford just to participate in some of the professional learning communities that they have over there, where they're really spending time with walking teachers through PPFT, showing them calibration videos, and to use one of Drew's words, they're demystifying the work. And so our principals are actually out there busy and leading. And so I want to thank all of our staff for continuing to provide students with a great educational experience. As I move throughout this community, whether we are in bond meetings or just general conversations, one of the pieces that's top of mind for many of the community members is the status of our special education department and the services that we provide to our students. And so I am asking Dr. Robinette to come up as we move along this journey. I want to be able to share updates periodically, but we know that we have a larger report coming up. But I do want to share with you all what we have for right now. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Robinette.
Good evening, Dr. Mays, President Rodriguez, trustees, members of the board. I'm Drew Robinette, Assistant Superintendent for Special Education. At any time, Dr. Mays and board, I want to thank you for the opportunity to highlight our over 10,500 students that are exceptional here in this district that receive special education services. And I especially want to thank you for elevating the essential and critical work that we know is not only on the horizon, but present for us, that we need to address on behalf of our children. In Austin, you set that tone. We embrace a vision of being Austin's home for inclusive learning for all students, with high expectations for all children and high outcomes for every student. And as a Department of Special Education, alongside our leaders here and our principals and our teachers, we are committed to transforming the vision and turning that into reality, and really ensuring that all of our students receiving special education services are welcomed in an inclusive environment in their schools, where they have access to rigorous learning environments, and where individual education plans are implemented with fidelity. So on the screen, I want to highlight for you the intentional mindset and system work that we're beginning. This is a work in progress. Beginning this summer, you'll probably recall that the Stetson report, Dr. Francis Stetson, our district engaged in a nationally known consulting group, coming to really study where our strengths were and where significant areas that we needed to highlight or shadows we needed to address in our system were brought to light. And that was completed and shared with you all last spring. And that is for us, especially as a new leader in the Department of Special Education, not new to our system, and for our team, really provides a roadmap for us and is transparent with our community about key areas that we need to address around leadership, which is really shared vision work across our system for students with disabilities, instruction, capacity building, staffing, and family engagement. And so one of the things that's been done thus far, I don't consider anything done, so let me qualify that. That's a work in progress since we've started, has been in response to those recommendations, quite a bit of leadership redesign for our system, and specifically you've heard of, and our community should know, organized into 3 large learning communities with really bridging shared ownership and responsibility for all students across our members of the schools, working alongside our academics and special education team members. So thank you for that, Dr. Mays and Chief Casas, for embracing that and bringing that to light for us and for our team. You'll see on the right-hand side of the screen what we call our big rocks. And Goodness knows there's a lot more rocks that are in our bucket, and those are not the only rocks that we need to address. But key priorities for us in partnership are to really address, and we're hearing from our community, but our data show it as well, the need for greater inclusion, inclusionary practices for our students, high-quality instruction for our students, and improved evaluations and compliance. We certainly have legal frameworks that we need to address as well. And so we kicked off not only that system design, but our Leadership Institute. Couple of highlights. Our Summer Institute was kicked off by Dr. Mays, Chief Casas, and Dr. Francis Stetson on what it takes to make a mind shift and reimagining equitable and inclusive classrooms in schools for our students. We launched in partnership with our inclusion work group just this fall. They worked on it through the spring. The guiding principles for inclusion for our district, those will serve as a beacon and a highlight for us around equitable access for our students, inclusive mindset, a sense of belonging, and that was co-developed with our community. Not only did our Leadership Institute have that kickoff with that focus for all of our principals and assistant principals, but likewise, we broke into sort of three main areas around those three big rocks that you're seeing there, and provided additional work and support for our principals, and likewise did similarly with a professional learning exchange day. It's not really a webinar, but course for all of our general education teachers and our special education teachers. So this is the first time launch of something that is required as a special education learning strand for our educators and campus-based instructional staff around deeper inclusion practices, essentials for multi-tiered systems of support, accommodations for students, and really differentiating for our learners' needs. We know you can't put that in at the end. You have to plan for that at the beginning, and that likewise is transforming our professional learning communities process with our leaders and our teachers as well. This is hard work, and it's hard work. And we want to thank our teachers. We want to thank all of our folks for embracing all of our learners. We really want to be known as a district that really operationalizes the vision that you all have set and that our data show we have not yet achieved. And so tonight is not a pep talk and a commercial to say that we are complete, but we are excited and we are compelled to continue this work alongside our staff members because we know it's the right work for our students. Last but not least, we look forward to bringing towards you the capacity building pieces, not only for our teachers and staff, which will be ongoing, and our leaders, but to come next month with a scope and sequence for our parent power hours. We talked about capacity building and outreach with our parents and our community engagement as well. We have a long way to go in that area, and we know that there are lots of ways to communicate with our team members digitally, but also in relationship and partnership with them. And so that is in development, and we have several of those things. We actually vetted some of that today. Thank you, Dr. Mays, as well. And we'll be looking forward to sharing that and getting that out to our community for throughout the year with a redesign of that parent support that has through the pandemic and other things been lacking in terms of that partnership, and we know that front loading is important. So thank you for the opportunity to share the work in progress, and we look for any opportunity to continue to champion on behalf of our students.
I do want to take a moment just to say thank you to Dr. Drew Robinette. Again, like she said, this is hard work and it is heart work. And so I want to acknowledge the fact that she does that every day for us. And we want you to stay right here with us doing all of this heart and hard work. All right. So
we will not run from this work. This is the work that our students deserve, and we want to continue to rally people. Thank you, Dr. Mays.
There you go. Thank you. I think the next thing that's top of mind as I rotate, through the community and have conversations is, of course, how are we doing with our dual language? And so I do want to, again, as we do this work, I want to bring everybody along with us because, again, we get this work done together. And so I do want to, again, while it's not the official report, I did want to share with the community where we are. So I'll turn it over to Dr. Villalpando, our Assistant Superintendent for Multilingual Education.
Good evening, trustees and Dr. Mays. Thank you for allowing me to be here, this opportunity to speak with you this evening. My name is Susie Villalpando, and I'm the Assistant Superintendent, as he mentioned, for Multilingual Education and Student Programs. As many of you know, we've had the dual language model, which began as a pilot in the 2010-2011 school year. It began with about 10 elementary schools and now consists of 57 elementaries, 12 middle schools, and 4 high schools. During the spring and summer of this year, we partnered with a third-party consultant to conduct a dual language program evaluation. So as a result of the findings, we found that the feedback that we had heard from the community, anecdotal information, and our own experiences were pretty closely aligned with the findings of that report. So as a result, we began to draft, the MET team, the multilingual education team, a strategic plan. So although we've drafted that plan, we're really looking to internal and external stakeholders to help us finalize it so that it's not just a plan that came from a report, but it's truly indicative of our stakeholders that we have. Focus groups to arrive at this evaluation, there was multiple focus groups with students, our educators, our teachers, our administrators, parents, community members, and so we really had the voice from all of our stakeholders. So we're excited about this, and we're thrilled because we have lots of community and district support. Dr. Mays and Chief Casas have already joined us in multiple meetings with our community, and we're excited about the year that we have in front of us. Just a few things to share is that we're starting a dual language task force and subcommittees. We are excited that recently, in the past week, our communications department deployed a survey that went out to the community, not just parents and students in our district, and went out broadly to the community. So it was really well written so that we get information back as to interests and kind of the trends that are out there and where we might have some future planning based on this data. So currently, our MET team is already following up with families who have expressed interest or have had questions through that survey. Additionally, we're starting, as Dr. Robinette mentioned, our special populations are truly becoming a part of the core of what we do. And so one of the exciting things about our structure, having the Office of Academics and school leadership and special populations together, is that we can truly move the work faster, aligned, and have more concerted efforts than we probably have had in the past because of this structure. So we're excited about the support that we're receiving. But definitely we know that we can't do this work alone, and so we are grateful for the educators, for the leaders, and for our community leaders. We have various community groups that we work with and have really developed relationships with. And one example is that we're beginning to host, through our collaboration with the African American Dual Language Committee, ADLAC, we're beginning to host family Spanish classes this year at Wynn Elementary. So kudos to the volunteers who are making this happen, because we could not do this work without them, and to the campus leadership for wanting this. Additionally, we've begun principal training, and we'll be doing that on an ongoing basis, and it's just so much easier now that we have Chief Casas over all of the departments to really influence what we're doing in the training, that we're aligned in what we do, and then when we visit campuses together, we're deciding together what we're looking for and what are best practices. So we're excited about that. And on September 22nd, we're having sessions for the importance of bilingualism and biliteracy, and that is hosted with our parent support specialist. We're hosting watch parties where they learn more about why this is such an asset and benefit. And throughout the different parts of the city, we'll have discussions in those watch parties about how does that apply to us and what can we do. So we're excited about the upcoming year. I can't put in just a few minutes the excitement that we have and the people that we've really been able to hear from. And just want to thank you for your leadership and for getting us to this point to really start a really great year. So thank you so much.
I want to say thank you to Dr. Villalpando also, who's new to our team, somewhat new. But, you know, again, this is difficult work. We talked about moving cheese and tearing down fences. And so they're about a year behind where special education is in terms of full implementation. And so we definitely have a ways to go in terms of the systems that we're trying to build and strengthen. And so I want to thank both of these ladies for the work that they do here. And so thank you all. Next slide, please. Dual language, we'll have this on the agenda on October 13th for a deeper dive into the actual item. If you can go to the next slide, please. Austin ISD celebrations. Go ahead, next slide, please. Thank you. So we did get a chance. Our first honoree first became a campus teacher of the year, and then she was selected by Region 13 as the elementary teacher of the year. So it is really no surprise, but indeed a wonderful honor that Perez Elementary dual language teacher Carrie Johnston is one of the 6 finalists for the Texas Teacher of the Year, the state's top teaching honor. Ms. Johnston's success is a great example of the wonderful work being done in our dual language programs in Austin ISD. And I would add that it is not too late to enroll your child in a dual language program. I'll say it again, it is not too late to enroll your child in one of our dual language programs. Finalists will be interviewed in September and October by a panel of judges, followed by the selection of the Teacher of the Year honors for both elementary and secondary schools. We wish you the best of luck, and thank you, Ms. Johnston, for representing Austin ISD. Next slide, please. This week, members of the Austin Ed Fund will be visiting schools across the district and making a lot of teachers happy as they award grants totaling $300,000 to 52 projects in 41 schools. The grant program funds projects that focus on innovative teaching strategies that enhance learning and support the well-being of students, staff, and families. The projects focus wide variety of topics from law practice to STREAM. How many of you all know that there was an R now? Robotics. Promoting reading and writing to support groups for refugee students. And some of my favorites include Gus Garcia's YMLA. They are receiving funding for a media lab and after-school club, which will allow the school to create and manage a school YouTube channel and a school yearbook. Ortega Elementary will promote student well-being by offering SEL, mental and physical education support to their school community through yoga classes, dance classes, meditation, and physical fitness apps, and sensory and mindfulness room. And our multilingual education team will purchase sewing machines and materials for a bi-weekly sewing group, and that also functions as a support group for female Afghan students and their mothers. We are truly grateful for the work of the Austin Ed Fund and the support of our teachers, students, and community. Next slide, please. So you all know, of course, we've been challenged with teacher shortages, but something we love to see here in Austin ISD is our former students coming back to serve right here at home. Eastside ECHS English teacher and 2012 Eastside Memorial graduate, Lueva Ortiz, is a perfect example of this. She was recently awarded the first ever Panther Pen, recognizing teachers who go above and beyond in their work every day. Ms. Ortiz attended St. Edward's before returning to Eastside. In the short time since she's returned, she has built relationships with students, established class procedures, and helped support other staff. We are so fortunate to have her, one of our own, back here to help generations succeed. Next slide, please, Dr. J. And so earlier this week, I spent my morning at the Gus Garcia Young Men's Leadership Academy tie-tying ceremony. It was fantastic to hear the 7th and 8th graders share advice and words of wisdom with the newest young men of Gus Garcia. We all assisted the 6th graders with feeling successful walking into the school each day with a perfectly tied tie. A true brotherhood with everyone helping each other. I met so many service-oriented problem solvers who I know will do an amazing things in our community. And so again, thank you to Principal Mejia and the staff and the community, including members of 100 Black Men who made this event possible. And so that concludes my report. Again, thank you to all of our professionals out there doing the great work.
Thank you, Dr. Mays. You didn't mention Cassis Elementary School.
I'm sorry. I got you.
Sorry, we're just having a conversation. Dr. Mays was also at Cassis Elementary at the grand opening there, and so I'm sure we'll have some pictures at another time. Thank you, Dr. Mays. Trustees, are there any questions or anything you have questions about with the presentation? I know that you all are sending a lot of questions in around bilingual education, special education, and the trustee tracker. I know there's a lot of activity and interest in those issues, but is there anything you all want to raise up now? Trustee Singh?
Dr. Mays, I really appreciated having this little update. I think this kind of transparency is going to be really helpful to bring us along. So I'm really happy with what I heard, so thank you. I think in future presentations, like as we do more of a deep dive. Some of the things that stuck out to me that I wanted to see a little bit more about is really that implementation for both the SPED and the dual language bilingual education. So whatever tool that the staff is using to mark milestones and implementation, I would love to be able to see that so that we have that framework of how you all are judging success, so we have a common definition of what success looks like. Thank you.
Thank you, trustees. Anything? Trustee Lugo and then trustee Boswell.
Thank you. I want to echo Trustee Singh's comments, first for bringing these topics back. And also, it's no surprise to y'all, I love talking about implementation and implementation science, metrics, measures, accountability, milestones. So I would really love to, in whatever manner that can be provided, I would really love to get that information too.
Thank you. And yeah, I want to share my thanks. These are topics that are deeply important to a lot of our students in our community and things that there's been a great investment in. So I really appreciate all the update information and work that's being done. And I'm always thrilled to hear that people are working with families to shape this and amplify the work. So thank you for that, and our community partners. I know we have, with both dual language and special education, we are wealthy as a community in resources who really want to partner with us and work with us. So thank you for that. I have just two quick things. We had talked about when we heard the Stetson report, when Dr. Stetson came to present to us, one thing we asked what we could do as a board to help this work move forward. And one of her recommendations was to adopt a vision as a board of what we want our special education programs to be. I'd like to follow up on that and work toward that as a board, ideally perhaps with our department and our advocates, our community advocates, on really coming up with a vision that we can use to guide our work as that North Star as we're looking at the metrics and the rest of it. So I just want to put that back on an agenda item request. And then one thing that I also have been hearing a lot about from constituents and people in the community is students who have done dual language in elementary school and then perhaps had a different path for middle school or high school, not at one of our dual language schools because of issues of transportation or program or some other reason. And they're running out of classes, especially Spanish classes. And for a student who's been, having bilingual education since, kindergarten to get to their junior year in high school, they've passed the AP tests, with flying colors, to run out of Spanish classes. At that point, I would really love to work as a community to figure out how we make room for that. In a way that, they're not maybe doing the full dual language high school certification, but so they can at least continue their language all the way through until they leave Austin ISD. And I say that as someone who has struggled very hard to learn enough Spanish to relate to people and have conversations. And I know when I don't use it, I lose it. And I would hate to put our students in that position. So thank you for considering that.
Thank you, trustees. Any other questions? If not, thank you all both for your presentations. Our next item is a scorecard discussion and review of Goal 7, disparity of African American disciplinary actions, and Goal 8, disparity of special education disciplinary actions. Dr. Mace?
So we do have a team coming forward, and similar to the conversation that we just participated in my update, it really is about a team. So as you see Mr. Adams addressing discipline and compliance, like I always tell him, it shouldn't be a conversation that we have in isolation, that we should definitely see our SEL department, our Office of School Leadership, and our special education team doing this work in collaboration. And so we really are focused on eliminating those silos and bringing the team together to take care of the work. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Adams to kick us off.
Good evening, President Rodriguez, trustees, Dr. Mays. Thank you for providing us the opportunity to share an update of the 21-22 end of the year report for scorecard goals 7 and 8. I'm seated here with a few of the departments I work very closely with to make sure that we're improving our outcomes for our African American students and students receiving special education services. Scorecard Goals 7 and 8 were created to address the overrepresentation of disciplinary actions for African American students and students receiving special education services. Goal 7 measures the disproportionate disciplinary actions of African American students, and Goal 8 measures the disproportionate disciplinary actions for students receiving special education services. One example for our viewers is if students receiving special education services make up 14% of the student population, but they're represented in disciplinary actions of 30%, well, it's disproportionately represented by 16 percentage points. Disciplinary actions refer to incidents that result in in-school suspension, home suspensions, and discretionary removals to the DAP. Duplicated data is included in this measure as it gives us a clear indication of the number of incidents occurring. At this time, I would like to draw your attention to the slide, which is our progress monitoring report. The first slide shows the 4-year trend data and the board targets that were created in May 2022. This table indicates the final end-of-the-year data for school year 21-22. For school year 21-22, the African American enrollment was 6.5%. The disciplinary action scorecard target for this student group was 15%. The end-of-the-year actual was 17.5%. So we did not meet the goal or the target for Goal 7. Regarding Goal 8, the enrollment for students receiving special education services was 13.4%. The scorecard target was 34%. And our end-of-the-year actual was 29.7. So we met the target for Goal 8. A bright spot that I'd like to point out is the reduction of disciplinary incidents occurring in both scorecard date goals. This number is reflected in the denominator, which shows that in school year 18-19, we had 13,432 disciplinary actions of homeschool suspension, in-school suspension, and discretionary removals, compared to school year 21-22, where we had a total of 6,133 disciplinary actions. The number of disciplinary actions have reduced by 46%. However, we're still disproportionate for African American students and students receiving special education services. Let's move to the next graph right there. Go back if you would. So this top graph here is a visual representation of the 4-year trend data for both goals. The graph shows a decreasing trend for African American students and a comparable baseline data for our students receiving special education services. It's important to note that the enrollment percentage for both student groups has reduced over the past 4 years. In the bottom table, this is our progress monitoring sheet that we reported to the board in, last May of 2022. The table shows that the end of the first semester, our disproportionate disciplinary action percentage for African American students was 20%, and for students receiving special education services, it was 33%. During the second semester, secondary campuses with disproportionate data had to create a disproportionate disciplinary action plan to address their disproportionate outcomes. Based on these plans and monitoring coaching campus administrators by secondary leadership, we reduced the disproportionate disciplinary action for African American students from 20% to 17.5%, and for students receiving special education services from 33% to 29.7%. This year, campuses were required to create a proactive disciplinary action plan to address their disproportionality at the start of the school year. These plans will be updated every 9 weeks and will be monitored by secondary school leadership, Chief Casas, and my team. At this time, we're going to transition to our presentation. All right, and if you'll go to slide 2, thank you. So here on slide 2, the table, this is another representation of our scorecard. It again shows our data points from the previous years, scorecard, our middle of the year and actual for 21-22, and our target set by our school board. Next slide. So I want to take a minute to really look at our data for full transparency so we know exactly what our scorecard indicator and who it represents. Slide 3 provides a closer look at the data associated with Goal 7, which is the disproportionate disciplinary actions for African American students. The African American enrollment was 4,708 students, which was 6.5% of the total student population. We had a total of 1,076 disciplinary actions, which was 17.5% of all student disciplinary actions. The 1,076 disciplinary actions represented a unique student count of 451 students. The 451 unique African American student count is 9.6%. So this lets us know that 90% of our African American students do not receive a disciplinary referral. The table on the right provides more insight into the 451 students who received a disciplinary action. Just a reminder that a disciplinary action is a home suspension, in-school suspension, and a discretionary removal. So in this chart, you'll see that 218 students, which is 48.3%, received one disciplinary action. 101 students, which was 22.4%, received two disciplinary actions, and you can see the remaining data in the table. Next slide. This graph on the left shows the top 7 offenses of the 1,070 disciplinary actions. One thing to note is that the discipline management system has a total of 85 different actions. So again, here we're just looking at the top 7 actions. Here you see fights, physical aggression, and class cutting were the top 3 offenses. The graph on the right shows the disciplinary action breakdown. It shows the number of students, incidents of home suspension, in-school suspension, partial home and ISS suspension, and discretionary removals. Again, this breakdown of 1,070 disciplinary actions is duplicated data, meaning that a student with multiple incidents would be reflected in the data multiple times. Next slide, please. Slide 6 shows the disproportionate data for students receiving special education services in school year 21-22. Our special education enrollment was 10,373 students, which was 13.4% of our student population. There were a total of 1,825 disciplinary actions, which was 29.7% of all disciplinary actions. And we had a unique student count of 766 students, which is 7.4% of our students receiving special education service population. So again, here, that lets us know that 92% of our students receiving special education services did not receive a disciplinary action. Out of the 763 or 66 students that received a disciplinary action, 365 students, which was 47.7%, received only one disciplinary action. 180 students, which is 23.5%, received two disciplinary actions, and you can see the remaining totals in the table. Next slide. On slide 7, the graph on the left shows the top 7 offenses again for those 1,825 offenses. Fighting, physical aggression, and class cutting were the top 3 again. The graph on the right shows the comparison data of home suspension, in-school suspension, partial home and in-school suspension, and our discretionary removals. The top disciplinary action of home suspensions was 1,004 incidents, followed by ISS with 509 incidents. Another key piece of information is that 166 African American students are also represented in this special education data set here. This means that our African American students who receive special education services count twice in our data. Next slide. Slide 8 shows the number of disciplinary actions occurring by each month. You can see that October and May were the two highest months of disciplinary actions. In mid-October, campuses will be required to update their disciplinary action plan, and this will be an opportunity for them to be proactive in planning of how they're going to address their disproportionate actions that historically those trends have occurred during that month. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to my colleagues, and we're going to talk a little about what we're doing collectively to address our disproportionate disciplinary actions for both of our student groups represented in scorecard goals 7 and 8.
Good evening, Dr. Mays, President Rodriguez, and the rest of the board. So happy to be here. I'm Crystal Kohlhoff. I'm Director of Multi-Tiered Systems of Support. So the first slide I want to do is talk about the what. So multi-tiered systems of support is a tiered systemic framework to address academic and behavior supports in Tier 1 core instruction and Tier 2, Tier 3 intervention. And so this framework is called in Austin, we call it the Child Study Team, and that is the funneling of students through a problem-solving process. And multi-tiered systems of support, the core of that is the foundation of Tier 1 instruction. And this first piece of instruction is on the academic side of engaging effective instructional practices, and it also includes culturally responsive PBIS, which are those foundational behavior systems that develop a safe and supportive school for students to be able to learn in. And so we look at PBIS through the lens of school-wide systems, which are things like common areas like classrooms, hallways. How are we being safe and supportive, and what do our interactions look like as adults with students in those areas? And it also includes our classroom management plan. What we really look at is at Tier 1, if we have highly engaging instructions, students are engaged and they are exhibiting situationally appropriate behaviors and working with the classwork that we have. The second piece to that is making sure that we have a safe and supportive classroom system so that students are able to learn and they are in a safe place to use that prefrontal cortex that you learn about with Dr. Bruce Perry's work. That's really what we're looking at in those two pieces. So we really don't look at students in isolation of just talk about academics, just talk about behaviors. In a child study team, we look at the whole child all the time because our biggest purpose is asking why and what can we get to support those students. Next slide, please. So now this is the what. So this is what we do to support this work. And really the biggest piece of MTSS is this is designed for all students. Every single student is a general education student first. We just have some students that receive additional supports on top of that Tier 1 instruction. So the multi-tiered systems of support is developed through Campus Child Study Team and also their leadership team. And we have 5 integrated systems facilitators who are assigned to the learning communities, and they help support the campuses, analyze their data, develop child study team processes for problem solving, and to kind of really facilitate some systems and structures on the campus. So the way we can support this work is we help analyze the data with this comprehensive team to find out the areas that they need support in. So if the data on the campus is showing it is really occurring in common areas, a lot of referrals are coming out of cafeteria or before school, after school, we can come in and look at a systems check for that to see what the data is showing and then provide professional learning and support to build up those systems to have a safe environment. We also have data collection systems for classroom observation tools to look at effective instructional practices along with those classroom management practices that we know will support students in being able to learn in the classroom. So we can support teachers that have the highest referral rates on a campus and go in and coach those systems to help them implement those practices. The other piece that's most important is looking at putting interventions in place to support students. We want to move away from addressing behaviors by just removing students from the instructional setting to instead building skills and also looking at how we can, if they have the skill but have a performance gap, what types of systems can we put in place so that they can perform the skill more effectively and efficiently and stay in the classroom. So in analyzing that data, when we look at those top students that had those multiple referrals, we need to be going to child study team and developing some plans and looking at the whole student to really ask why. Is this due to an academic issue and they don't want to be in the classroom? Is it due to a skills deficit in social emotional learning? Or is it due to something going on in the classroom where they don't feel safe or have supportive relationships with the adults around them, and really have those in-depth conversations to build a supportive plan for the student. So those are some of a little high overview of some of the things we do to support, and then I will pass it on to my other colleagues, and we also support them in their work as well.
Good afternoon. It is a pleasure to be here tonight. I am Teresa Rocha-Gill. I'm the Executive Director of Special Education. And in order to provide behavioral support to our students, the discipline team and the special education department will continue to meet weekly to review ISS, OSS, and discretionary removals. Last year, the department assigned 2 behavior coordinators to work with Mr. Adams. They met weekly, and they reviewed and analyzed behavioral data, and they also reviewed disciplinary removals. This year, we want to expand that discipline review team to include a cross-functional review team component. We want to include members from the Office of School Leadership, Academic MTSS, and the Department of Special Education, and this team will meet monthly to track bright spots within the district so that we can share good information. Whatever is working well, we want to identify it and also inform our other campuses so they can look at and come and visit those schools that do have good behavioral systems. We also want to identify those campuses that are in need of support, and also to review data, root causes, and develop solutions. This cross-functional review team will also plan targeted capacity building activities. So these types of activities will assist all stakeholders who work with students in need of positive behavioral interventions. This team will also address the issue of student behaviors, students that have been identified in Tier 3. There is a need to add more tools to staff who work with those students who do not respond to Tier 1 or Tier 2 interventions, or who work with students who have more significant needs for support. We began this message this summer at our Leadership Institute. We support strong student engagement activities, and we also recognize the need for strong Tier 1 instruction, as well as effective behavior support and classroom management activities and systems. This year, the department reorganized our campus support coordinators. They have been assigned several campuses, and they meet with their campus staff and principals biweekly. And they will also discuss strategies and findings from the discipline review team with their campus staff in order to make change there as well.
Okay, and a couple of things of support that my department is providing is, number one, we required all campuses to develop their disciplinary action plan before the start of the school year. Each campus leadership team must review its data in order to develop their plan. This includes looking at the staff who wrote the most referrals, looking at students with the most referrals to develop a plan to support those students. The plan should identify what professional development is needed for individual staff or for the entire campus. Plans should also create, or campuses should also create those academic and behavior intervention plans in ECST so that we have that documentation and that accountability that plans are being implemented with fidelity. This year, we also have 2 new restorative practice coordinators that are on my team. These coordinators support 10 campuses. These schools were selected based on the number of disciplinary incidents occurring. They were also selected based on their disproportionate data. And also, we looked at panoramic survey data. So there was 2 questions we focused on. school culture and school belonging. So we looked at the feedback from students, staff, and family, and this allows us to be able to have a baseline that as we continue to implement restorative practice through the course of the year, we can see, are we making improvement and how we're being effective with the implementation. We've also started providing professional development. This summer, we presented at the AP Leadership Institute, the Leadership Institute, and we've also are scheduled to present at the principal's upcoming meetings as well. And lastly, when I first came, one of the reasons why I think we struggled to meet this target was because our campuses didn't have a clear data source where they could go and measure this. So we've worked with our Forecast 5 vendor, and we've built a dashboard where now district leadership and campuses can look at real-time data and then make interventions or adjustments as needed as well.
Good evening. I am Laura Stout, Associate Superintendent for Secondary Schools. In response to the disproportionate data regarding discipline for our African American students, Secondary Office of School Leadership monitors every single removal request for DAEP. Those come straight to my office, and Mr. Adams and I meet for every single one. Executive directors review campus discipline data during their principal coaching meetings at campus visits. We meet to discuss every single ALC discretionary removal, such as to review ECST data, discipline history, special education, whether it's a manifestation, and we look at the infraction, like the scenario, to see at what level of severity it is, and other things. We coach campus administrators on discriminatory practices and re-examining rules or policies for discriminatory practices that negatively affect our African American students. We work to engage students in the learning process so that they are not isolated or disengaged. Executive directors monitor campus action plans and monitor discipline reports with a focus on our African American students every 9 weeks to monitor which staff members remove students the most, to determine which campuses suspend students the most, to work with campus administrators to provide support for teachers, such as training on looking through a trauma-informed lens, which is a new training that we're going through. We will continue training for principals at principals meetings related to discipline and discriminatory practices. This year, we will add discipline scenarios to calibrate on referrals and responses to behaviors to make sure all secondary campuses are offering support before discipline. We don't want one campus to give, or offer a certain discipline for a student and a different campus to give a different discipline for the same infraction. We need to be calibrated. In looking into the future, we want to develop mentoring programs with Fidelity, continue training teachers through a trauma-informed lens to determine if there is a need behind the behavior, seek to identify what the need is that may be causing the behavior, training teachers for the need to be addressed to change the behavior, such as with mindfulness, like taking deep breaths, offering peace corners where students can pause and self-regulate, taking a walk, taking time to gather thoughts, doing sensory activities such as drawing or coloring or holding and handling objects. We'd like to partner with parents to see what the needs are by making phone calls home to ask parents what would help, what they suggest. Have students write daily self-affirmation journal entries for a positive start to their day. Continue to provide teacher training for building relationships with students, connecting with students, and de-escalation techniques as well. Not sending students to the office on their first classroom infraction, but use restorative practices or redirection or self-regulation techniques first. Not suspending students on their first trip to the office, but use restorative practices or redirection or self-regulation techniques first. And making sure that campuses have documented other actions that they have tried before removing them from the learning environment. So making sure that ECST, that they've got everything that they've done in there. We don't want to receive a referral, and we suspend a student, but we look at ECST and we have nothing documented. We've tried nothing, we haven't called, we haven't had conversations with the students. So we want to make sure that all of those steps are in place before those students are sent home or sent to ISS, removed from the classroom.
Thank you. This concludes the presentation. Excuse me. Thank you. This concludes the presentation portion of our time.
Thank you all.
Thank you all very much. Trustees, now is the time for us to ask questions on the current vision. And our goal tonight is monitoring and ensuring our reality matches the vision presented. So when asking questions, we should try to focus on the data presented, asking questions about who, what, why, and how. And Trustee Anderson had her hand up, I think, when the presentation started, so I'll recognize her first.
Thank you for this presentation. This is a pretty, I don't want to say passionate, but I've been that student who got referred. I've been there. So my questions are, you mentioned a disciplinary action plan. Who will monitor that? Is it something that a campus writes and it's just there? Is it something that'll be updated, something that's looked at frequently?
Okay. We'll both take that, but it's something that the executive director that supervised that principal will be monitoring, and we've developed a checkoff system that ensures that they've monitored, where they'll have their notes. But then also, I report out to the OSL at our leadership meeting on our plans, and Chief Costas as well. She's asked for an update. And one of the things that we're going to be adding as we met this week is, some of the interventions that previously were offered or suggested to schools are now going to be required, so that if we see disproportionate data rates are higher and they're not making progress, well, then this is the required training that those campuses are going to have to implement at the campus level.
The only thing that I would add is that I would monitor the work of the executive directors to make sure that that work is happening on campuses. They will work with principals. I will make sure that it is happening through their visits as we look at the work that they do on campuses.
You knew what I was going to say, didn't you?
No, that's in my heart. And we're really doing it.
So what will the professional development look like?
I can take a stab at that. So some of the things that we offer is we have a whole professional learning series, and we did link that in your packet so you see some of the things that we offer. But really looking at the data will drive what professional learning that we'll be offering to the campuses. And then through the Office of School Leadership, she will be monitoring to make sure that they actually attend those. But it can be anything like active supervision. If we've gone and taken observation data and staff are not actively supervising and engaging with students in a safe, respectful manner, and students are not being safe in those areas, we will provide professional learning on active supervision. Or we have a classroom scaffolding, classroom management training. We have that through Blend, and we'll be offering that as well. And the MTSS department is now also offering Thursday Zoom sessions where we do deep dive 30-minute sessions that are offered about 8 times a day on topics we know occur regularly every year. And then we also have Thursday office hours from 8 to 4, where any staff member, principal, administrator can come into our Zoom room and ask those questions or problem solve or kind of debrief. And they can also sign up for sessions that we can go to on the campus for that as well. And then we also offer lots of professional learning on how to run an effective child study team, what it means to look at multiple sources of data, what it means to address the whole child, and how to write effective intervention plans and how to implement that in the most effective way. So those are just a couple examples of some of the professional learning that we do have. We also have trauma-informed care and some brain-based learning opportunities that we have as well at the secondary that we can roll out to.
So does any of that include communication?
Yes, ma'am. So we do have a whole section about it's about student respect, how we communicate with students, a positive ratio of interactions versus constantly correcting students? What is your acknowledgement system? And then also looking at how I have systems set up that engage students in a culturally responsive way. And then as a teacher, we have reflection activities to reflect on how I'm responding to students in the moment and maybe changing some of those biases or trained responses that I have developed as a teacher to reflect on those and maybe break through some of those to change those interactions.
Okay, and a huge concern of mine, I've had every time I hear ECST, one thing I hope that does not happen is it becomes a place where, you know, you have a incident with a student, you're documenting, and it continues to follow the student. So, you know, when that student goes to a new campus, you know, there's this picture painted of them that may not be accurate. It may be, you know, maybe it's an interaction. Maybe I had an interaction with you and we just didn't vibe good. But you've documented that and it's followed me. And so people perceive me to be this, you know, horrible person, and I'm not. So what system will be in place to ensure that once something is documented in ECST, when I get to middle school, when I get to high school, that isn't following me and people have this picture of me that maybe I was going through something and I've came through it. Or maybe that's not even the case, but you've documented it based off of whatever the case is. So what system will be in place for that?
So I think one of the things you're probably talking about is how we can document service activities that we have. And so for that is a big training piece where ECST is not designed to be a behavior log or a log of things that I've noticed happening with the student. It is really designed as a depository of all the services and supports I've provided a student. That's really the design of that. So we do training on how to appropriately track what that service is that you provided. So they shouldn't be putting things in ECST such as student tore up a paper in class. Really what should be documented is what was the service provided. Student was given time in the peace area and a new activity was given to them to complete. That's what should be documented in there. So really what we're seeing, it should be about the adults and the services that they're providing to support the student. So then when I'm a teacher and I can look at that the next year, I can see, oh, these things worked well with the student. I'm going to try those right away so I don't have to guess. I can hit the ground running with, wow, they responded really well to the peace area. It looks like they need some squishy balls at the desk because it looked like the teacher used that a lot. So it's really a training issue to make sure that it is used in the most appropriate manner because we don't want it to be in a way that a student is being perceived a certain way. And then I read that and I'm already making decisions about how the student's going to be in our classroom. And we don't want it to be that at all. So it is a big training piece. And we do have a mini topic Zoom session about service activity tracking. And we do have that coming up, I believe, in October because we know that is a big training piece for our staff.
But how are you going to monitor it, though? Because I just what you just said, I can see if somebody's talking about a peace corner. Oh, I sent so-and-so to a peace corner because they were doing so-and-so and so-and-so. So, you know, it may be training, but that's something you're going to have to keep an eye on because I can see that happening because I've had like a little, I saw how ECST works. That's why ever since I've seen it, it's been a huge concern of mine. And so I hope that, you know, in this, not only in this process, that somebody is making sure that stuff like that doesn't follow a student, because that's harmful within itself. Thank you.
Absolutely, thank you.
I would like to just add real quick that there needs to be a shift in how we document those things. And so in the Office of School Leadership, you know that we're boots on the ground. So that's one of the things that we can absolutely monitor and spot check to make sure that we are monitoring accurately, that we are providing services, that we're careful how we enter information into the system because it is supposed to be for supports so that we can look in, anyone can look in the student's profile and say, what has been tried, what can I try next to support the student? So the nurse can put something in, a counselor can put something in, an administrator can put something in, but through conversations and monitoring, I think that, and training, this is how it looks, this is how it could look or should look. And so back to the scenarios and the samples, I think that we can get that point across and we can improve the way that that information looks.
And from a discipline standpoint, students get a fresh start every year. So all of the interventions, services that were provided the previous year, when we're considering discretionary offenses, we're starting every student fresh. So our expectation is, if a student has exhibited some of those characteristics, well, we need to go back to providing counseling, referring to the mental health, partnering the student with the mentor, all of those services before we move to discipline. One of the things that we did over the summer is, because a lot of students mature over the summer, is we didn't continue placements with probably 95% of our students. We actually only had 5 students that continued their DAP placement from the previous year, so that those students are getting a fresh start at the beginning of the school year as well. So from discipline aspect, we're giving all students a fresh start, and we're expecting campuses to start over with providing those interventions and documenting all of that in ECST.
Thank you.
Trustee Ashe. You touched briefly on this. Was just wondering if you might be able to put some more definition around unconscious bias and how that plays into what we're seeing here, and what steps we are taking to address that.
Yeah, so that really kind of lends itself to our culturally responsive PBIS in really engaging in reflective practices of understanding how, a conversation we have is rude to adult. What does that actually mean? What does that mean to the student? What does that mean to the adult? And looking at maybe why I might think something is rude when it's really just students engaging in how they talk nowadays. But we might be taking offense to that. So it really is taking this reflective piece to see, is there something that I need to look at to change my interactions? And also looking at how some of our systems are designed for PBIS in terms of what it means to be respectful, safe, responsible. Are we looking at that through a cultural lens? For this particular school community, is it appropriate that students are sitting in straight rows, they're quiet, they're not engaging with each other, or is talking okay? And for this particular group, is it culturally appropriate? Is it developmentally appropriate? What does that look like? Instead of kind of making these standardized list of rules, it's really looking at our community, that what's developmentally appropriate, and then as an adult, engaging in those practices of understanding how students are today, what that communication looks like, how they use technology. It's very different from when we were in school and how we were taught. So sometimes we're having to reflect on new practices and new ways to engage, and understanding why I might have felt a certain way with an interaction that occurred. That might be where that unconscious bias is. The tone or how someone stood wasn't aggressive, but someone might feel that it is. So how can we engage in those in-depth conversations to really talk about, was that in fact what was happening with the student?
And so how where's the question? I'm trying to make sure I'm asking the right one, or if I'm asking it in the way that I want to dig into, which is, well, what are we doing with our, we are a large organization with a lot of staff, and not just teachers. I think we have said that teachers, yes, absolutely, and we know that they are getting training, but our teachers are not the only teachers, if you will. So how are we touching all of our staff to help address those things?
Well, I think what's really helpful is MTSS is within the social emotional wellness and systems of support umbrella. So that also includes our counseling mental health. It also includes our SEL CP&I. And then we also have a sub-branch of that under counseling, which does our trauma-informed and brain-based learning opportunities. So within that, we kind of all collaborate, and we also collaborate with other departments as well to make sure that we have embedded these pieces into all of our training. And then we've tried to outreach as much as possible. So we have a larger department that can support those needs through counseling, SELCP&I, or MTSS. And then we are offering a lot more Zoom sessions. We are offering times where principals bring us in for PLCs. We've had several campuses that have asked for their entire staff when we've done training, even cafeteria, custodians, everyone be there to talk about systems and structures and interactions with students. So I think we're getting there, but you're right, it is a very big district and a big undertaking. So one of the things that Oscar kind of alluded to and Dr. Stout was a lot of things that we offered in the spring were offered, and a lot of them weren't taken by the campuses. So we are developing a proposal of, if your data shows these indicators, these are going to be some mandatory requirements for you that you have to put in your plan, and then Dr. Stout will be the accountability piece for that to check off to make sure that they were done. And this will be based on the data that we collect and see where the issues are. But we have looked at what happened in the spring and realized that was the missing piece, was making some things mandatory for campuses based on their data.
I would add, Trustee Asher, I think that can versus will been the operative word, when we talk about the silos and this team working together, because she may see who didn't attend, but it's like, okay, did you then share that with the group to let them know that based on the data that you two discussed, that we didn't have X, Y, and Z to show up for the necessary training. And so those are that's how this is kind of being massaged out. And I think that, again, what we're talking about now is trying to make sure that you cover as many of these places where you see this, hot spots. But I know that training everybody is definitely going to be a challenge. So it's really about looking at the data and trying to make sure we determine where do we actually need to provide that intervention, and making sure that we actually follow up and make sure that intervention takes place.
Great. And then shifting a little bit, in my times of studying when I was in college, which was many moons ago, but still remember the data. Their usual trend was yes, African American students were overrepresented in disciplinary actions, but then it also went so far as to say young African American men or boys were overrepresented. Are we finding that in our data? I know it wasn't teased out that way, but I was curious if y'all had looked at the data in that way.
We did. I think data showed that it was about 60% males to 40% females. So it's not a huge discrepancy that we sometimes see in other trend data, but there is a significant discrepancy or a difference there.
Is there anything in there that you were like, we would target in this way to respond to that? Or did you find that the discrepancy was small enough that maybe it didn't need to be so specialized? Does that make sense?
It does. I think that's something that we're still going to need to look at the data as well to kind of identify where do we see those data points. As I shared, we in our African American population, we have 166 students that also receive special education services as well too. And in looking at that data, we also it shows that we have a larger number of male students receiving special education services than our female students as well too. So as far as how we're going to respond, I think we're going to have to continue to look at some research-based practices, identify where we need to provide support to be able to target that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee. Trustees, other questions? Trustee Singh and then Trustee Lugo.
Thank you. I really appreciate the interdisciplinary nature of this little panel here. Nice. I like that. I don't think we've had this before, and so I really really appreciate it. And I see Dr. Ross back there too. And I know they have your blessing. And you all know I love Dr. Ross. So if she's good with it, I'm good with it. But but I do have some questions. You've talked about, so it was really interesting to me to see the breakdown of what the big infractions are, and a lot of them have to do with fighting, getting along with each other. It's not stuff like, drugs or, things that are just, there's a category, right? And so it comes to mind, how do we teach kids to resolve conflicts peacefully? Is that taught in any class?
That's a great question. I think part of that is we have the advisory period where we can do some lessons and provide just, how do you resolve a conflict? One of the things that we've started that I've been really excited with our restorative practice coordinators is they're starting to hold those restorative circles. Frankie Mendoza, who's supporting 5 of our schools, he shared a story recently that, 2 students that were about to get in a fight, he held a restorative circle, and when both of them heard about the experience that the other person is going through and what they're dealing with in their personal life, by the end of that circle, they were hugging one another and really saying, man, I didn't know you were going through that. So there are strategies that can be held, and that's where we're starting to teach that the coordinators are going to be working with the teachers how to hold a restorative circle. And then how do you hold a harm circle after harm has been done? Because until we start having those conversations and teaching that skill development, we're not going to see a reduction in those incidents.
Okay, I appreciate that, and I would be very interested in seeing some data on the implementation of restorative circles and some connection between the students who are, especially the repeat offenders, the kids who are, fighting a lot. Are they being taught these as explicit skills? I remember back to my teaching days, I had a friend who told me, I remember like the biggest problem, like in my classroom management problem I had was like kids like fighting with each other. Like it wasn't like punches, but like, bickering. And then a friend of mine just taught me a very simple script, and I swear I still use it to this day, like with my own kids. And it just like completely changed the whole tone of my classroom. And so I appreciate the talk about professional development and training teachers, but I'm also really curious to see like the actual implementation data. So I think that's my theme for tonight is like show me how this is actually reaching students. And I'm also really curious to know, I would love for us to see how we can expand programs like PALS, which I know that is part of the PALS curriculum is conflict resolution, and it's very well done. It's based on years and years of research, and kids love it. And I would hope that might be something that we can expand into our advisories and et cetera if it's not already there. We have that curriculum in the district. The other thing, one thing I kind of picked up on, which I liked, but I felt like maybe, I also felt like maybe there was too much emphasis on it perhaps, was like putting so much on the classroom teacher. I appreciate the support that you're giving to teachers and helping them and training them and offering all this kind of stuff. But when you're talking about like student behavior and social emotional state and all that kind of stuff, I kept waiting to hear something about families, and how are parents brought into this, and students themselves. I really appreciated Trustee Anderson when she was talking about the monitoring, and one thing I thought of is like, okay, are we ever looping back with students and saying, hey, how do you think that was handled? How did we do? Or going back to parents, how did you feel about, how we handled the situation? Did we get it? Like just some sort of informal kind of relationship building, because I think it takes a village, right? It doesn't all have to be on the school district and the teachers. I also was curious to know about structural issues in our schools that are creating conditions that kind of foment this. Okay, so yes, it's great that we're supporting teachers as much as we can. But I talked about family, I talked about living back with students, but I'm also really curious to think about, is the district thinking about things like class size? Maybe in some of our, this is an equity thing, like maybe in some of our schools where we're seeing a lot of fighting, where we're seeing students who are just, the teacher can, even the best teacher can't always manage a classroom if you have too many kids with too many needs. So maybe we look at some of our schools and say, hey, maybe at these schools we're going to give them an extra TA, or we're going to reduce the class size. that might have a much easier, like a profound effect and a quicker effect. And things like looking at student engagement, looking at staffing. Okay, y'all know I'm going to talk about staffing. I don't see Ms. Stevens. She probably like ducked out or, but you know, when we look at where our vacancies are, they're in East Side schools. They're in schools with a lot of Black kids. They're in schools with a higher percentage of special education kids. So I do hope, I've been asking for this for a long time, and our board monitoring reports is show me a comparison of outcomes for students where students have had a certified, highly qualified teacher and where they haven't. Because I imagine there's a huge story there. If a kid does not have a highly qualified SPED teacher, they're gonna have a lot more issues. And if those HR issues are concentrated in our East Side schools, that's a systemic issue, and we have to do better at making sure we have our highly qualified teachers spread equitably across the district. And so I would like to see that in the board monitoring report. Talk about how that's happening and talk about how families are being engaged. That would be really helpful. And we typically, the other thing I wanted to ask is we typically get data by campus. I noticed we didn't have that this time, but I would be curious to see if that's something that could be shared with the board, because that helps us triangulate and see like, okay, where is this concentrated? And then the last thing I have is, does every campus have a child study team?
Yes, ma'am. Every campus has a child study team. The conversations we're having is looking at levels of implementation and effective use of that problem-solving team, and looking at multiple sources of data and building intervention plans. So we're triangulating our campuses with the highest disproportionate levels and looking at ECST to see how many meetings they've had and how many interventions they have to determine if it's a systems issue that we need to look at.
Okay, I appreciate that. And the last comment I wrote is, I hope you don't have an ECST on all of us trustees. I was thinking about that one. I was like, man, if you had a file on all of us, it would be pretty hilarious to see. But anyway, I do want to thank you for your good work and look forward to more.
I do want to say that the ECST process is not a negative process. If you actually get a chance to go see, the process, it really is about having collaborative conversations about what are the needs of the students, what can we do to help them, what can we do to support them. And so, like they said, you got nurses there, you got counselors there, you got teachers there, it's almost like an art, but it's really about, let's figure out what the solutions are to support the student in the best case scenario. But like she said, there are situations where we do need to strengthen the implementation at various campuses.
Thank you. Trustee Lugo?
All right. Thank y'all again. So I want to pick up on a couple of things that have already been touched on. But it's because I'm looking at this little, y'all know I'm going to hold it up. I'm going to hold it up every time. I'm just going to do it. So I love the questions around staffing, class size, around effective use of the tools and resources and people that are already available. And my mind immediately goes to one of the questions that we're encouraged to ask, which is how might whatever it is that y'all learn this year, how might those changes or improvements show up in the future? Budget, and also thinking ahead about next year's staff leveling, right? Like, we're already in it this year. I understand, right? It's hard to move a large ship, but thinking ahead about each year as the district continues to learn and improve, how will that be impact? How will that show up in the budget? How will that show up in how leveling occurs? Whether it's changes to weights of student groups. So that's kind of where my first question is at.
Yeah, I think that even this year alone, you can see, budget implementation. You see the addition of the restorative coaches for the campuses, because in previous years, this was something that was funded by a grant, and it was pretty restrictive in terms of how we could use it. And so this year, we wanted to make sure that we added those positions and support. So I believe we added 2, I think, and, anytime we can find additional dollars to strengthen that, we want to be able to do it. He mentioned Frankie Mendoza. He's all over the place in terms of being on those campuses, working with our students and the teachers and the administrators to be able to show them, hey, this is how this goes. But that's one way, artifact for evidence this year. As we look at next year, I think that definitely want to be able to get creative with the staffing piece. Ms. Tony's over there. We were talking this morning about some of the campuses where we know that we continue to struggle with vacancies. So it's really about, okay, as we go through this leveling process, how can we prioritize them as a first option? But then as we roll into next year, which I'm going to say I feel pretty confident when I think about some of the campuses that are struggling. I think about some of the new leaders that are in those places. I'm pretty confident that they're going to retain quite a few of their staff, but right now it's really about getting out of the hole. And so we're having those conversations because we recognize that's where we are. Don't have an answer just yet, but we are having that conversation. Again, as early as this morning, we were talking about it. So we see the same issues and challenges that you all see.
Thank you. Let's see. So one of the other things, I jotted down a bunch of notes, so they're all over the place, but just kind of circling back to the training and coaching. What I was hearing is that, there are training options available through Zoom, through Blend. What kind of in-person training is available?
So we have a full series that we offer during the summer. So we have classroom management, child study team. We have tiered behavior intervention trainings that we offer in the summer.
But those are optional, right?
They are optional, but we are working on developing a proposal of things that would be mandatory, especially for our child study teams. We need that child study team chair to attend to be able to build a really strong problem-solving team on their campus. So we are developing a proposal for next year, so those wouldn't be optional. And then during the school year, we have 5 specialists that are able to go out, and we do job-embedded professional learning in the form of coaching. So we take observational data, and then we coach teachers on those strategies. We also embed within the child study team to build capacity on their problem-solving and choosing appropriate interventions and services. We also have training that we're rolling out in our youth service mapping, which is a program that allows us to connect families with community partners that are available on their campus in the child study team meeting as well. And then we also have PLC time that we can provide training or after school. So we'll do that at the campus level as well. We're just needing to be creative with the Blend and Zoom this year due to the staffing changes that we had. So having 5 get across all the campus, we're thinking outside the box, but what's really amazing about that is it's an opportunity for us to be creative in how we can offer these. So I'm going to be really excited to see as we pick up these Thursday trainings, how many people start coming to get these little mini topic sessions, and I'm pretty excited about what that's going to look like.
That is exciting. And I think also, I don't know, but y'all can tell me, will there be feedback that's solicited, at different points so that y'all can say, ooh, that Zoom didn't go so well, or, oh my gosh, people really love that other Zoom, right?
Yeah, we do little feedback forms at the end. We do little exit surveys, or we do QR codes. So we collect that data, and we're constantly going back and changing things. So we actually, based on the last 2 years worth of data, completely refined our classroom management training and really embedded a lot of those reflective types of questions that I was telling Trustee Ashe about based on the feedback that we had from our campuses. So definitely we do collect that.
Great, thank you. The other thing is, speaking about feedback, so the campus disproportionality action plan, it may or may not be happening now, y'all can tell us, but how are, and I think some of the other trustees mentioned this as well, how are students being asked, give us your feedback? And I know that's kind of a radical idea. I always think back to when my mom saw my 2-year-old choose what he wanted to drink for breakfast. And it's like, yeah, kids have autonomy. They have their own ideas. He got orange juice that day. So, I think about that, and I think about especially the students who, that table that we saw, what page is it? one of them is page 3, right? I think about the students that are calculated in the category for 3rd, 4th, and 5th disciplinary actions, and how few times in their normal life, like outside of school life, much less in school life, how few times they're given the opportunity to say, what do you think? How are things going? What's wrong, right? Like, I want to help you, or we want to find a way to make you successful. Like, nobody ever asked. Oftentimes, that's not the question that's asked, right? Unless you're the smart, nerdy kid, and then it's like, oh, I want to help you because you've got potential. And it's like, but they have potential too.
And I think that brings up a really good point of, what the SELCP&I team is really working on is that student voice and student advocacy. And student voice just doesn't mean we let them come up and do a presentation. It's really like they're in there from the beginning. So we do have a few processes within MTSS. So we do have something called a daily behavior report card that can be done at Tier 2 and Tier 3. And that's a really nice collaborative piece, especially at Tier 3 where it's individualized, where you really talk about here's where the behavior is right now and your skill level. Here's the way that we can build up that skill set to what our goal behavior is. And the key component to that is this nice feedback loop and also self-reflection on that as well. And then the other piece to that is that trauma-informed Dr. Bruce Perry stuff, where we really are asking those questions with students like, hey, what's going on? And really getting to the root of that piece. And then we also encourage our secondary campuses and even upper elementary to involve the students in the child study team meetings as well. We have pieces of training that we've done in the past on a collaborative problem-solving model as well, where we're really working with students to problem solve and have parents involved as well. But I do agree it's something that is very at the beginning stages, and how do we harness that? Because if we don't ask those questions about why to them, we're imposing what we think is actually happening, and we could be wrong. So we do need to engage in that more. And so I will definitely look at our trainings and how we can incorporate some more of that student voice and advocacy in there.
Yeah.
And I would want to add, like, one of the trainings and techniques that our restorative practice coordinators are working with campuses on is just restorative circles. Talking with students, spending a couple of minutes every day just asking students how they're doing. One quick check-in that we do with students is, let me know where you're at today. Thumbs up, I'm doing great. Sideways, okay. Thumbs down. And then teachers are trained when you quickly look at your students and you see a student with his thumb down, well then sometime during the class, go check in with that student. Hey, Crystal, what's going on? Is everything okay?
You need a snack or the peace
Absolutely.
corner.
Something happened over there.
I need to get you some orange juice.
So they're not having to address that in front of the whole class, but to go check in and follow up, and then you can sometimes mitigate a situation before it escalates. So teaching those techniques, and that's what we're also working on with the restorative, is what are our Tier 1 strategies that we're going to be working on with all campuses, what's Tier 2, developing respect agreements. So as a class, what does respect look like from teacher to student, student to teacher, peer to peer, and then peer to or class to community, which is the whole school environment. So those are the strategies that we're also incorporating at the campuses that we're supporting, that hopefully with funding, we'll be able to add additional coordinators at some point as well.
Oh, let's get some businesses to donate. So kind of along those same lines, I'm thinking about, oh my goodness, it just escaped me, but I'll come back to it if it pops back into my head. The other question was around getting feedback from parents. Maybe it was Trustee Ashe who had mentioned that. And I often think about, again, the students that are, having 3rd, 4th, 5th disciplinary actions. Who knows, right, what their situation might be. And it's really hard to know, especially if you're the teacher or the campus principal. And so I don't know, I genuinely don't know, is there ever an opportunity to find out from the guardian or the parent, is there another adult, right? Because sometimes the parent or the guardian, they don't got it right now, right? Go talk to grandma, because grandma's got time, I got to go to my second job, he's crazy, he's got issue, right? They need help. And it's not always, I think a lot of times parents and guardians in those positions can feel like they're being judged for not being, quote unquote, right, a good, whatever it is that a good parent is, whatever that means. And at the end of the day, it's stressful being a parent or guardian. And so I guess my question is really, what might that look like in the future?
Yeah. So I can tell you that, Dr. Williams is back there, and they're all one team, and this ideal of mentoring, we've really doubled down on concentrating at our middle school level, where we know we have a significant amount of those referrals. And so not just that mentoring team with Dr. Williams, but also in our visits with API, we're all rowing in the same direction. So API understands that our focus right now is on providing mentors at a particular campus, at a particular grade level, where we know that, again, the parents and the families and the students need additional support. And so we've really been pretty tactical about, strategizing and pulling these teams together, as well as our external partners together, to try to focus on meeting some needs like the mentoring piece. So that's not a later on thing, it's something that we're working on now.
That's great. Yeah, building toward it. Yeah, it's never a finished thing. Always building upon it. And I'm wondering too, if embedded in that are strategies to recruit men, because I've seen. I know. Every time I go to a mentoring program, I need men to be there. I need men to be there because 60% of the kids that are going into these disciplinary actions, it just comes across differently. You can have a healthy, engaged, kind of interaction with any mentor, right? And sometimes it just really matters who you talk to and how that makes the student feel, and allowing the student to opt into, whatever their preference is, but they can't choose somebody who's not there. So.
Yeah, so Ms. Bailey is back there. We do have, some of, and I know she's been meeting with you, Trustee Boswell, as we think about even the reading initiative that we're working to institute, or we're going to roll out in a little bit. Our concentration and our focus is on men. And I'm not trying to be sexist, of course, but like you said, we recognize that it does matter. And so I have been putting this additional pressure on Mr. Adams to develop that programmatic piece, because we've been, you can see the evolution of where we were last year to where we are now, hopefully, in terms of, starting to really zone in, okay, now we got the structures in place, now how do we continue to zone in and implement with fidelity? But that is a piece that we're talking about, like, okay, what's the next iteration of this piece?
So, Mr. Adams, I would love to have lunch with anybody, because I've got a lot of opinions, because recruiting, males for mentoring programs or any other program, like that is something that's near and dear to my heart. Like anything to kind of connect young men with older men who've probably learned a lot along the way, right? And they can kind of guide and have those conversations that just, again, come across a little differently. So for real, I really do want lunch. You can come too, Dr. Mays. But y'all have to buy. No, I'm kidding. All right. Okay. I promise I'm almost done. The other question, emotional regulation. And y'all probably already have this kind of embedded in the trauma-informed training. But and so I'm going to talk about myself. So as a parent who did not grow up in a home where there was emotional regulation, I had to learn how to regulate myself. Like, and I'm just wired different. I'm a unicorn. So thank goodness. But even with that, even though I was able to kind of learn how to regulate myself emotionally, becoming a parent was different. Because now I'm like, this child is. So this both connects to the teachers and staff. Because if teachers and staff are stressed, the most amazing human being, if they are stressed, if they are at the end of they are just one moment away from walking out, right? That's really hard to emotionally regulate someone else when you're not able to do that. And so what that makes me think about is last last year at around this time, I mean, we saw it, right? We saw it coming that students were going to have a time period where they were going to have to reacclimate. You know, it was hard on the students and it was hard on teachers and staff. And so I'm just curious, like, what lessons from that year are kind of informing some of the things that y'all are doing now, and then what might be done in the future, because that would also probably be a budget thing or a staffing thing, or, you know, how do we address that?
Yeah, I think Mrs. Hosack isn't here right now, but just our focus in terms of intentionally having staff that's dedicated at supporting principals and leaders with addressing those basically cultural needs at the campus, we've focused on that, right? We started with that focus this summer. What you might see on some campuses is we have peace corners for teachers too. We have, you know, rooms where they can go and regulate themselves. A little massage chair, a little, you know, fragrance in the room, dim lights, but providing that space for even the professionals just throughout the day because it's needed. But again, Ms. Hosack isn't here, but she could probably take a deeper dive at some of the training that we've been doing for our leaders to really be sensitive to the culture that we're building at the campus level to support teachers.
I love that. And I also think, to whatever extent this might be happening organically, maybe looking at, is it happening? And then how does this next part how does the gospel get spread to more people? And by that I mean, you know, a lot of times when young people hear from the adults that have authority and they hear us say, yeah, I need to put myself in timeout. I'm having a rough time right now. I need to walk away because I care about you. And again, when does that happen? And so I'm sure it does happen at some campuses, but kind of looking at, you know, who are the outliers on the positive side, who are the outliers on the side where it's like, yeah, you guys, you know, let's work together to improve and use tools and kind of think of things differently. So yeah, I don't know if y'all ever get to see that during observations, or if y'all would ever kind of keep an eye out for those just vulnerable moments where adults are people and show kids that getting angry and wanting to hurt someone else is actually a really human emotion, and we don't have to follow that impulse, right?
Well, and I think that really lends itself to the work that Oscar's department does and what the SOS department does as well. And I will say that is what we saw as we were in classrooms as the MTSS department. We saw classrooms where the teacher, we had to chunk things a little bit smaller, so it was something that they could handle at the time, or our coaching sessions weren't so much about the instructional practices and what was going on in the classroom with behavior. It was just what's happening with you. So we actually turned a lot of our coaching sessions into what's going on with you, how can I help, what is something I could take off your plate, can I make this for you, just to get to a place, like you said, so they can kind of regulate. And I think the lovely thing about our brain-based learning and trauma-informed practices is that training, if you attend it, is actually geared towards the adults. We actually don't talk about students in it. We just talk about humans. We're all humans. And so that's the way we frame a lot of our trainings is we all have these interactions. We all have brains. We all flip our lid and we have to bring it back down. And what are those strategies? And get them to reflect on strategies they use. And how can we do that for students? And then the other piece is that developmental piece. Sometimes we put adult strategies on students where it's developmentally inappropriate. So we also have those conversations of what is appropriate for a 4- and 5-year-old versus a 20-year-old.
Right, yeah.
And so it's really that understanding the way the brain works and developmentally what's appropriate and really changing that mindset of what it looks like to be a student. And then with COVID, we really did struggle seeing that acclimation of students of I haven't been around anyone if I'm a kindergartner, to a 3rd grader, to I haven't had to sit down for more than 5 minutes. And so we really kind of had to reframe our expectations a little bit, still having high standards, but understanding our scaffolding needed to be a lot more with those supports. And so our coaching, we did see it, our coaching coaching did change due to that, and we have kind of tweaked some of our professional learning to incorporate some of those things, because it is true. We need, I can't dysregulate you if I'm dysregulated, and so we are seeing that and supporting teachers.
That's awesome. Hey, can I take those trainings? I'm not even joking. Like, I need help.
We will make the training available for trustee members and any adults within our, because like she said, if you're dysregulated, it's kind of hard to regulate somebody else. And
Yeah.
so part of our focus this year is on, again, as a district, is climate and culture. And so we want to take care of those that got to take care of the kids.
That's awesome. Okay, last question, I'll be quiet. One of the things I jotted down was mandatory versus like really getting folks to believe in the process. And I think that so what I've often observed is that you need a little bit of both. Which I wish it could all be like, hey, get believers behind and we're all going to champion change and it's all going to be great. And sometimes you just have to say like, no, this is the standard, this is what we're going to do, give it a try. And so I'm wondering to what extent y'all are thinking about looking for those folks that were maybe really not on board. They got over the hump, they gave it a try, and then they were like, oh my God, why haven't I been using this, right? Or even folks right now who are just really good about using those tools and really good about creating that culture within their campus, and can connect with other kind of like equally positioned folks to help them along and say, yeah, I know it kind of seems a little, but, try this, right? And I'm sure some of that happens in the coaching, but I'm also thinking about just like the leadership part.
Yeah, so in terms of MTSS and our child study team, we have child study team strengthening meetings. And part of that meeting is also kind of building that coalition of peers and allowing them to share best practices. And it is exactly what you said. You'll see kind of people sitting in there listening to what someone said, oh, we started this practice and this is what happened. And you see them starting to jot down notes. And so we are able to showcase some of those best practices. And then we're able to really also kind of refine practices by the data that we're seeing or the time of year we know something's happening. So it'll be kind of a little bit of a sit and get of some best practices, and then we have a sharing piece and also a partnering of this campus is doing this really well, or they had this great idea and they're able to share it and be able to share those practices and go visit and see how it happens as well. But we haven't systematized it in a way. It's kind of organic, like you said. Yeah. So that is something we need to look at. And I think Dr. Stout and I are really going to be building this plan of what are those necessary things that are mandatory and what are those things that we take a deeper dive that we can get people to come to because they choose to, because they're bought into it, but you can't make everything mandatory.
Right.
So we're really gonna have to prioritize that and develop that plan to roll that out.
Yeah, because if everything's mandatory, then people will only do it while they're being monitored.
Yeah.
But if we can get some more believers and people that feel capable of using the tools. And then the other thing would be if there's ever an opportunity to recognize teachers or staff or administrators who've really grown in that area, I would just love to be able to meet them, share my gratitude, because people go into the line of work of teaching because they genuinely have a heart for kids, and it's really hard. It's really hard. So just wanted to throw that out there. Thank you.
No, I appreciate that. You sound like you are in support of our Platinum Rave Award, because we've been discussing giving you all a Platinum Rave Award to recognize individuals around culture, which is our focus for this year. And so it sounds like you all will be in support of handing out Platinum Rave Awards from the board.
Trustee Boswell and Trustee Zapata.
Thank you. So I want to start with just some appreciation. First, really hearing about partnerships and with our community and how that just is weaving into our conversation again and again tonight, that there are lots of people ready to do this work with us, mentoring right now, talking about that and the relationships. So thank you for that. Really want to share appreciation for the focus on child development, on neuroscience, on the work of Bruce Perry, that really is the foundation of what you're doing with the adults and the students. So thank you for that. And really want to share appreciation for connecting strong academics that are engaging our students to student behavior, to what we're seeing in the classroom. And I will say, as a student, I got in trouble when I was bored. So, I appreciate that, and saw the same in my own kids. So thank you for that. I got quite a few N's in conduct for talking when I got bored. So, yes. So thank you for all of that, because I know that really weaves into, what students get and how they're feeling when they're at school. So thank you for that. I have just a couple of questions. One, I know that we have put on our scorecard tracking the disproportionality in discipline for our African American students, our students who receive special education services, because those are the categories in which the numbers told us we had just massive disproportionality. And I know we have, more than half of our students are Hispanic, that we have in sheer numbers lots of other students who are facing discipline who are more proportionate to the district as a whole. I think it goes without saying, but I think it's also worth saying, from everything we're hearing tonight, the work you're doing is benefiting every student in every classroom in our district. Fair to say? Okay,
Yeah, I think if you're focusing on Tier 1, where all student is a gen ed student first in a Tier 1 classroom, I think that is the biggest impact. And even though the report card is only looking at those 2 indicators, we look at all of the data to see where our students are falling. But because we're focusing on those foundational skills, we will impact all students.
Thank you. Good. That's really powerful to think about the reach of what all this is. So thank you for that. I also want to just echo what Trustee Lugo said about the cuts at central office, that, really great to see that we're adding the restorative coaches, that we're adding things. And I know we have lost instructional support. We have lost behavioral specialists. We have lost some of that central office support in our counseling department, and really would love to continue that conversation with you as we look ahead to budgeting, to where we might make the most impact if we can find some dollars to enhance what you're doing, because of that reach, because of how it fits in with all of our other goals. So I would love to keep that conversation going, because I know we're hearing from campus that they're feeling that, and I'm sure you guys are too. So thank you for that. And then I have one question, which is, anytime you have a big push like this, and we're seeing the raw numbers come down quickly and the disproportionality come down more slowly, I think there's always the risk of unintended consequences, that there's real pressure to perform, that people are being monitored closely. And I would love to know how you're working to avoid some shadow discipline issues, some other things that we know happen often in systems when this kind of pressure is put on, and how we're making sure that the numbers we see reflect really the kinds of things we're hoping to see, and not people feeling that pressure, intentionally or not, to kind of discipline in ways that are not seen.
Okay. So one of the things that I share with principals is that this scorecard measures those discretionary offenses. So the accountability for a student that's under the influence, brings a weapon to school, that's not represented in the data. It also measures home suspension and in-school suspension. So when campuses or a teacher writes a referral, it only is targeted or included in this measure if the student is suspended or placed in school suspension. So some of the things that Crystal and her team shares is 64 things that campuses can do in lieu of a suspension or in-school suspension, and equipping those principals with how do we use some strategies such as restorative practices, a restorative circle that you can do to resolve conflict, versus we need to suspend them and send them to the house and then they're coming back to school and there hasn't been any intervention. So it's really not encouraging campuses not to input referrals, but how do we respond differently to it?
And as a follow-up, how are we making sure people aren't calling and saying, hey, come get your kid, where it's not really registering? I mean, I know they can take lots of different forms. So what are we doing to make sure that we're really honoring this work with fidelity and not encouraging practices or incentivizing practices that don't align with the real goals and practices and the work that you're doing?
That's a great question. We look at the data, because if we're seeing that, then we also know attendance is being affected by that. So we're looking at attendance data, But then also, if we have that's reported to us that this is going on, then we address it with that campus and those administrators. So it's just continue to look at data, because data tells the full story of what's going on. So even though you may be trying to hide something here, like you said, there's an unintended consequence that it will show up somewhere else as well.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, trustees. Zapata?
Okay. Thank you. That information was very helpful. I appreciate all your hard work. Just wanted to, AISD has some amazing partners. One of them is Safe Alliance, who has groups, right? And it's all about expect, respect. And that's the word that we really need to figure out how do we create that in in all our campuses. Respect for each other, respect for our adults around there. We have partners that do that work, so I just wanted to lift that up, because we don't have to reinvent the wheel when there's already a partner who's doing amazing work with our students, but it just needs to be amplified, right? And then y'all talked about the mentors, and yeah, this is something I've been looking at since the beginning of being here, because every student, these 1,000 students, they all need a mentor. We should not wait till they get second, third, fourth offenses. They should get it immediately, and I'm just curious, how many have already received a mentor to date? If you have that answer.
We probably don't have it available for you now, but what I can do is create a board update and share that. But again, I know that our focus is on, like I said, those middle school students, so we can give it to you.
Because, every single child, these are the priority, I would say these are priority students to really make sure they have all their needs met and are getting all the supports they need. But every student in this district deserves a mentor, because the pandemic has done such damage that they need that adult, that someone that's going to say, how was your day? Tell me about your day. What did you learn? To have that conversation, because there's no social skills right now with many of our kids. When I did job training this summer with our students, I could barely hear them because they don't speak up. Their penmanship is, I have this magnifier that magnifies really big, and I can't read signatures. So even taking them to the very basics like we used to writing when they're in ISS, write something, write what you're feeling, like a journal. Use that time for them to do some self-reflections. That's class who started wanting to help others, and teachers were excited about identifying that one student who they saw really grow from some of the things that they were going through. So finding a way to recognize that growth is also important. So I don't know if that's something that you all have thought about, because, there's all these steps when there's a mess up, but what about when they're finally feel like someone really cares, somebody's listening, and they're changing, and then there's no recognition? I just think a lot of our kids need recognition. Does that make sense? And you said, Dr. Stout, you mentioned that some schools have their teams, and then there's some schools that are including everyone. And that's the model that we should work towards, because many times that team may not be on campus, and people don't know who the team is. But when they're inclusive, from the hall monitors to custodians to the cafeteria people, there's always someone that's going to be able to assist. And everyone on that campus is a leader. And so I just think that's great to hear that there are some campuses doing it that way. But that should be a norm. You know, I think that's where we should strive towards, or to create that culture of a unified campus where everybody is part of that solution. My light went out. Okay, I think that's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Zapata. Trustee Foster?
Hey, y'all. Thanks for everything tonight. Just really quickly, if I were to go to a campus and just go and observe ISS, what do you think I'd see going on?
You would see students working quietly in a classroom with an adult.
Would they be, you think they'd be working? Would they be engaged?
I think they would be working. I think that we could do a better job with providing lessons for them, maybe something more structured that we can provide for them as far as a curriculum goes. They're
Right.
probably working on assignments from their teachers that maybe they might be behind on, or so that they don't get behind on work. Hopefully we'll have teachers visiting students in ISS. That would be ideal.
Right.
And I'm sure that we have that happening at some of our campuses. I'm not sure if we have that at all, but that would be an ideal situation, is for teachers or paraprofessionals to come in and visit students and we just kind of monitor the work. But the adult
So-
is in there working with students.
Right. And so we'd want to see, for instance, whoever's sort of monitoring the ISS with a sense of the student and the student's expectations for the day. And in other words, not just like kind of wasted time.
Shouldn't be. They should be engaged in their assignments.
Right.
And they
right.
should, have assignments for, previous days or for, what they're working on currently.
Right. There's all these sort of conversations about what ISS should look like. And it's one of those, for me, devils in the details kind of things. Like, I see these models. I've been to, I've been in these spaces, and the description of the glorious dynamic things that happen in ISS, I'm going, what planet are we living on where there's this interaction and engagement, and the person leading ISS is kind of walking around kid to kid and seeing what's going on, and are you doing what Miss McGillicuddy, wanted you to do, and how can I help, And on one hand, I want to put that on skills and training, but I actually also want to put it on numbers and scarcity of resources, and really providing the supports necessary, and having also folks with the skills and dispositions who are able to kind of lead. ISS is not my favorite thing in terms of what actually happens. And my fear is always the dumping ground. My fear is always that really what's happening is we're trying to preserve the learning opportunity for the 29 at the expense of the 1. Yeah, I mean, if we ever think that happens. And so, and it would be wonderful if we could be serving all 30, and it becomes an ongoing challenge. And I don't offer this by way of critique or criticism. I offer this as kind of active wondering and active worry, as we do this. And so I guess the next question is, do you have the resources you need to do the job that is the job that needs to be done?
I think we have to work with what we have. And so it ends up being creative and thinking outside the box, which leads to innovation. Sometimes we do things because we have the staff and we do things the way we've always done it. And I think what we've had to do with the budget cuts that happened at central office is we've had to innovate. We'll always say yes, more staff would help, but sometimes more bodies isn't always the answer, and so innovation can be the answer. So I think we have to look at ways to support campus differently. And I think one thing that's really important is building capacity on the campus. They have to have the capacity to support students because we can't come in and swoop in at a moment's notice to come do it for them. So we need to do it with and build that capacity. We're just having to be creative right now with the limited staff that we have to do it. And the best way to do that is with a partnership, so we can leverage multiple trainings, multiple people, and we can go in as a team, and then we can target multiple areas. That collaborative piece is going to be what helps us get through this year.
So, so I love the answer in terms of the turn towards we're going to have to figure this out and beginning to even go down the path of what that looks like. Partnerships, pulling people in, leveraging resources in a different way. But I also like the sort of pause, because it took you a second. How are we going to answer this? Because Dr. Mays, what I would offer and say is that if we need to find more resources from the DIAS side, from the budgeting side, as Trustee Boswell said, I think that that's what we need to do. When you say, well, we have two additional folks on staff, I think, doing restorative work, or, you know, and supporting 10 campuses each, and you develop the criteria to determine which 10 campuses, I'm gonna bet that the needs are not limited to 20 campuses in our district. And that if you, through your innovation, are finding really good ways to do it, and especially to my interest, I'm not, as always, interested in incremental gains. I'm interested in the brilliance that produces transformative innovation. So when you find the transformative innovation, when you find that the restorative circles, as Trustee Singh was talking about, if we see data that, look, we are able to have that category of one disciplinary action not cascade into 2, 3, 4, 5, or that one not even become a 1, because the restorative circles actually work and we start to see data that this is working, then it's on us, trustees, to figure out how to support you to get that done. I really appreciated everything I heard tonight in terms of what we're trying to do and the ways in which we're thinking about it. And the whole time I was thinking, do we have the resources? Do we have the resources? This sounds great. And I'm like literally imagining campuses and thinking, do they have the resources to get this done? And it's a fear, it's a worry of mine that you get to the point where austerity, and I hate that word, I hate thinking in terms of austerity, but you get to the point where when you're thinking austerity, at some point you're cutting the nutritional value down so much that the body is getting weaker, no matter how efficient, no matter how careful, no matter how well you prepare the meal. So I guess I'm looking to Dr. Mays and I'm looking to us. When we find good practices, please lift them up and put the pressure on us to do the work to get the budget right.
Yeah, I think that, whether we're looking at the Stetson report or the dual language report, we know that we have work to do with the Tier 1 piece, because it really is about, like you said, how do we keep all of them in the classroom, meeting all of their needs? And so that's the piece where, we could benefit from, of course, more people providing that support for, the campuses, but we know where we are. And so as we looked at data last year, we recognized that, okay, restorative practices was an area of focus for us. Student discipline and making changes in this area was an area of focus. And so we did make the investment on those individuals. And it was a stretch to get to the second individual, but we made that stretch. And, Dr. Williams and the team were really good about rubbing two nickels together to try to get it all done. And so I'll share with them what it is that I'm trying to do, and they go about figuring out how we make it happen. As we look at next year, we'll also be looking at, okay, do we have enough money to, dedicate to this resource that we know is proven to be effective for supporting our teachers and students? So that won't stop. And if we have a need, I'm not shy and I don't have a problem with asking you all, so get ready.
I like to hear that, so thank you all very much.
Thank you all. Trustees, any other questions? I just had one comment, and just to commend you all on the multidisciplinary approach. I know that a few years ago, when I think Trustee Singh and Trustee Wagner and I were all on the board, we were surprised by my observation of us as a district of schools and not a school district when it comes to the disciplinary, the discretionary disciplines. And to see you all move and create fidelity in the system that doesn't just allow one individual person to make that decision, but you have a system approach to it that's equitable as well and fair across the system, that's some movement towards what I think Trustee Foster is talking about, transformational change that actually has the impact to those students and their families as well. So I really appreciate the work, and I know it's hard work, and I think, as one of your colleagues said, it's also hard work, so thank you very, very much. Trustees and Dr. Mays, thank you all very much for the discussion, and thank you all for the discussion. As part of our commitment to monitoring, there's one last question to ask, if trustees accept the report presented as it aligns with our goals and constraints, and if not, to ask if this is still the right strategy for the district. So trustees, please raise your right hand if you're ready to accept tonight's report. Thank you all very, very much, and I appreciate everything you do. Thank you. We will now move to our next item, which is public testimony for items on consent agenda. Members of the public wishing to participate in the public testimony portion of our meeting call the dedicated AISD phone line in advance of the meeting to sign up to speak in person or to audio record their remarks. And tonight, we have 2 individuals signed up to speak in person, and we have none who have left a recorded message. And just to note, 1 individual has signed up for 3 different items, so I'll call them up 3 different times. In order to provide as many opportunities for input as possible within a limited time period at this meeting, each speaker will be allotted 1 minute. There's no substitutions or yielding of time to others is permitted. Callers who signed up to speak in person are welcome to come to the microphone when their name is called. And as you come to the microphone, there's a device that will light up as you move through your 1 minute of allotted time. When the buzzer sounds, please make a final thought in 1 sentence. And again, we ask that whether you come to give a complaint or praise, that you reference the staff member by position or by abbreviated last name. We ask that all audience members, whether speaking or not, please show respect for others at all times. Tonight's speakers are Candace Hunter on item 7.1, and then we have Wendy Sandlin on item 12.3, 4.6, and 4.7. So we'll start with Candace.
Good evening, trustees. I've actually amended, since we sat through that presentation, some of the things I want to speak to you about in my 1 minute. I am here about 7.1. Everything I heard tonight from our staff is been teaching best practices for about 15 years. I think we've missed a really powerful, high-impact opportunity to teach these materials to teachers before we put them in front of students, because after, it's reactive and not proactive. I really want to encourage the board and the district to shift to more proactive stance. While the district is doing better, it's not a surprise anymore when we see that Black kids are failing or that children who receive special ed services are failing. It's kind of become the standard. I do want to point out a couple things that if I can note from the data, I believe that our staff can do some really good things with this data. The first is that I open records requested some information, and I can tell you that they're where those spots are. I'm not sure why we're waiting for something bad to happen, but a South Austin Middle School, a North Austin Middle School, 2 South Austin high schools. What I don't see on this list of ALC mandatory and discretionary are any East Side high schools over 4. Thank you.
Thank you. Wendy? Wendy Sandlin. Going once, going twice. I think Ms. Sandlin is not present. Well, thank you all to our speakers. This concludes public testimony. Trustees, are there any questions or clarifications? Trustee Anderson.
I just have a comment. Jacob, it's like really cold and the air is like blowing right here. Please. Thank you.
I'll just note that that was a point of privilege for Trustee Anderson as that topic was not on the agenda. Before Trustee Foster raises a point of order there. Thank you, trustees. As a reminder, please feel free to share any general comments or questions on non-voting items with the board by email at trustees@austinisd.org. We now will move to the consent agenda. So trustees, are there any consent items anyone would like to pull for a separate vote? Trustee Anderson.
I would like to pull 14.1 for a separate vote.
Okay, trustees, any others? And is there a second for that?
Second.
Okay. Secretary Singh, do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
Yes. I do have a motion to approve the consent agenda. I make a motion to approve consent agenda items. Excuse me. Let's see. 10.1 and 10.2, 11.1 through 11.6, 12.1 through 12.3, 13.1 and 13.2, 14.2 through 14.8, and that's it.
Second.
Okay, having a motion by Trustee Zapata has seconded. Trustees, are there any discussion on these consent items? Hearing none and having a motion by Secretary Singh and a second by Trustee Zapata to approve consent agenda items 10.1, 10.2, 11.1 to 11.6, 12.1 to 12.3, 13.1 and 13.2, and 14.2 to 14.8. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes by all those on the dais. We'll now move to those items pulled from the agenda. And the only item pulled from the agenda was 14.1. Trustee Singh, do we have a motion?
Yes, I move that we approve agenda item 14.1, PE local.
Trustees, do we have a second? Okay. Trustees, any questions or comments? Trustee Anderson.
So I saw some changes, and I guess for me were concerning. And I guess but I want to try to find the rationale as to the why. As I was reading through a change that I saw, monitoring was removed, and student outcomes, and I thought student outcomes, well, at least for me, I thought was the North Star. So if we're not monitoring student outcomes, then what are we doing?
So, Trustee Anderson, Dr. Reach, is that a question you can answer, or?
Thank you, President Rodriguez, Dr. Mays, and Board of Trustees. Trustee Anderson, if I'm following along correctly, I think you're referring to page 1 of 4, where the original language was listing items that would constitute automatic placement on the agenda. In the original language utilized was board student outcome goals, and then we had another item that was listed as constraints, which was a term that we previously used and we're not using any longer. And so notably that line was struck, but then my understanding was the change of student outcome goals to district scorecard goals was just to provide clarity on the items that would be on there, recognizing that almost all of them are student outcome goals. Our goals 1 through 8 are student outcome goals. But some of our other goals are focused around operational goals, or no, the one you heard tonight is student-focused, I apologize. The staffing retention goals, and so it was trying to be more broad to capture any of the items that would have been on the scorecard, if I understood that change correctly.
So here's my issue with what you said, operational. I remember coming on this board was heavily operational, heavily. And so I hope that we're not trying to get back there, because we will be here 2 and 3 o'clock in the morning. Well, I won't. I won't. Let me clear that up. I won't. But what is wrong with pulling out student outcomes? To me, words matter. So when you have that and it isn't highlighted, like, I thought that's what we're supposed to be doing. So for me, like, just saying scorecard goals, like, highlight student outcomes, that's I thought that was the conversation we had, and that being our North Star. I remember that term. I remember that. So to say scorecard goals and it includes operational stuff, to me, we're going backwards. And I hope that's not the case.
Trustee Anderson, thank you for pointing that out. That is definitely not the intent. The intent, I think, was to align to our district scorecard, and if there's an amendment, a friendly amendment to add language that highlights the district scorecard, including student outcomes or something to that effect, I think that would be great, if you want to include that, if that's helpful.
That would be great. And another word I saw, the difference between shall and may. Words matter.
Yeah.
So what does shall mean and what does may? To me, those are two different things.
They're very different. You are correct. They are very different things. I think what happened from our last board information meeting to this one is Dr. Reach went out and spoke to each of the trustees and found that a majority supported the use of the word shall instead of may on that particular paragraph, which I'm, just to clarify, is the part about pulling items, is that?
No, it's about putting items on the.
No, sir, it is.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, following the steps that we go through when a trustee requests an agenda item.
Yeah.
The original language, well, actually, the original language was very different. But then there was looking at a change that would say that if those steps were all completed and we were still at a point where the trustee felt that further discussion was needed, then the question comes up to that it shall be added to an agenda, or that it may, which would indicate that the board officers would then still consider whether that gets added to an agenda or not.
And the one thing I would just add to what Dr. Reach just said, it shall be added to an agenda at an appropriate time, because then it goes back to the board officers to figure out when that is. Because I think we hear, especially I hear Trustee Anderson and Trustee Zapata in particular, you all's feedback about not staying here really late at night and adding things intentionally. And so I think as this is an iterative process, I think we'll learn from that and see if it works or not. Trustee Anderson?
So here's my concern. You know, I think about when I get off of the board, the next trustees that will be on. And I hope the goal is wanting not only the public to participate in the process, but for a person coming on as a trustee to be able to participate and not sacrifice their job to participate as a trustee. And for a visual, because I saved this, right? This is the difference between shall and may. This was wasn't it a 2:30 night? So if a new trustee comes on, has a job, this is a 2:30 night, and you gotta be at work at 8. and shall and may. Just keep this in mind, because I saved it just for this moment, just for this moment. But we want those that are coming on after us to be able to participate, and we want the community to be able to participate. And shall and may, not only that, but if you're having important topics come, you want people to be able to listen to it and not be discussing budget at 11, 12, 1. That's not, so shall and may. This is may, or this is shall, whichever one. But look, so if you want to save it, but I saved it just so you could see. This is not, this ain't cool. This is not cool. Thank you.
Thank you, Trustee Anderson. Very well, duly noted. I think to summarize what you were sharing, obviously you were sharing feedback, but I think one of the things that I just want to clarify from a governance perspective, Trustee Singh, do you accept the friendly amendment to add language that highlights the student outcomes?
Yes.
Okay.
Can we get exactly what that is?
That was taken out.
Monitoring, yeah, student outcomes and monitoring. If we could add it back in or highlight.
Sure. Do we need to have the exact wording right now?
So would you like to say, would you like to say on page 1, goals, an item directly related to the setting or monitoring of the district's scorecard goals, comma, including student outcome goals and monitoring, comma, shall be automatically added to the agenda
Sounds good.
during the months indicated on the board's monitoring calendar? Okay.
Yeah.
I'll write that up.
Great, thank you.
So Secretary Singh has accepted that friendly amendment. So having a motion by Trustee Singh and a second by Trustee Zapata to approve agenda item 14.1 with the friendly amendment added, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All, 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3.
But hold on, Amy, are we not done? Like,
Oh,
what happened
sorry.
what happened to the other piece with the shall and the may?
Oh,
Isn't it all in there?
well, I'll hold on for just 1 second. So one, we've added the friendly amendment on that part. So are you making a motion to add, to change the shall to may?
I am making a motion to change the shall to may.
Okay, so from a governance perspective, Christine, how would that work? Trustee Anderson has made a motion to change the language from shall to may in,
So you need a second and then you vote on the amendment,
Okay.
right? Unless it's accepted, which it seems
so
that's pretty.
Trustee Anderson has made a motion to change the language from shall to may. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, so I have a motion to change from shall to may from Trustee Anderson and a second by Trustee Ashe. All those, any discussion on it?
President Rodriguez, can I please confirm that that would be a motion to change shall to may for both the management issue section and the governance issue section? Because that language is found in 2 areas.
Yes.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay. So, Trustee Singh.
I have just some discussion on that. So my understanding is the way it's written with shall, it would go through a process of vetting by the board officers and administration, and possibly be handled through a small group session or something like that. And then if the requester still is like, nope, I want this to be on a public meeting, that's where the shall comes in. Right.
And the shall is clarified as not meaning the immediate next meeting, but goes back to the governance, to the board officers to figure out when the appropriate time it is to schedule it. And I think,
Okay.
and with that, I think the presiding officer, the president has 10 days to respond back in writing to make sure that,
Okay,
that we know what that is, or whether it's pending or what, there has to be a response back
Okay,
to the trustee.
got it.
Yes, trustee.
And if I may, to further clarify, after the process has been gone through with other options, other ways to discuss, it still requires 3 people to get it onto the agenda. It's not just the requester, it still requires 3.
It still requires 3, and it also requires it to go back through the governance committee to schedule at the appropriate time. And again, there was a lot of discussion, clarification about, it doesn't mean it comes on the next immediate calendar, just because we wanted to make sure that we still have an organization that's governing, making decisions appropriately, and we wouldn't be like adding things to both trustee Zapata and trustee Anderson's points about being here till 1:30 or 2 in the morning. We wanted to make sure that that was not, that was not going to be the case. Hope that makes sense. Yeah, trustee Singh.
So, so I really appreciate the idea about, not being here till very late, but I also just want to caution that there are items that have been brought to a public meeting precisely because 3 trustees have asked for it, and some examples of that include the police KPI monitoring, the Stetson report, and other things. So just keep in mind as we're thinking about this that there could be an unintended consequence of keeping things from public discussion if we keep it at shall, if we change the shall to may.
Trustee Anderson.
But another unintended consequence could be what I hope I don't see is a trustee's personal agenda. Because to me, I didn't want the 3. I didn't want it at 3 because to me, that's the bare minimum. If me and 2 other people, hey, like, let's do so, whatever the case is. Like, to me, that's the bare minimum. I actually wanted 5 because I believe if a trustee, we each have relationships, no matter if we bicker or not. We each have relationships with each other. And if somebody is passionate as you about a topic, then hey, why not support it? But right now, it's literally the bare minimum, which gets us this. So my concern, again, if we want people to be able to participate when we're off of the board, whenever that is, like, you want to be able to, you putting this in policy, and it's going to hinder a lot of more people from not being interested in becoming a trustee because the meetings are so long. Like, I understand what you're saying. I get it. But I have some real concerns, and to me, words matter. Shall and may, those are 2 different things. And I understand there's a process, turnaround time or whatever, but right now, what I see, it really bothers me. And I want people, whenever I lead this board, how long I got? I want whoever comes on after me to be able to be in these meetings and it be manageable. And it's not, every time you come, it's a 2:30 night or it's a 2 o'clock night because you have just so much stuff on here that I would consider operational, which is where we're coming from. Like, that was, when we got on here, it was so much operational stuff on the agenda, it was ridiculous. But there are other ways to get stuff on the agenda. And I'm not picking on you, I'm not fussing at you, but certain things, and I can't remember, it was one thing you mentioned, like, you have the planning calendar of stuff that Dr. Mays has to bring to us by when. Like, there's an opportunity, hey, Dr. Mays, so when can you get so-and-so to us as a board? That's an opportunity right there. It doesn't necessarily mean that, and it'll get on the agenda. There you go, right there. But all I'm saying is, words matter, and as it stands right now, this is what it's gonna be right here, just from what I see. Thank you.
Trustee Anderson, you bring up a good legal point that I want to just ask our board counsel about. So currently, the policy says 3 trustees. I can't remember if we had the discussion, but to Trustee Anderson's point about 5 trustees, would we be violating the Texas Open Meetings Act if we do that?
Right, I mean, that's been my concern from the beginning, is just keeping it to a number that's not going to lead to a quorum.
So less than 5, just because that would potentially lead to some
Conversations
that may move us into that area, which we want to stay away from. And I just wanted to clarify why we don't have 3. So, okay. Got it. Trustee Liu.
So I appreciate the conversation. As one of the, I guess, newer trustees and fellow at-large trustee, accountability and governance, when I was a parent sitting in the audience, or when I was reading the paper or hearing to scuttlebutt out in the street, I always wondered, why aren't harder questions asked? So why am I saying that? Well, I'm saying it because the Stetson report wasn't going to come to us unless it was asked for. Other agenda items weren't going to come to us. And you're right. And anyone who says, you know what, should we be here till 2 or 3? No, that's a reasonable person would say no. And I think a reasonable person would also say that a good governing board will not just rubber stamp things because it makes it easier. We were elected to serve and volunteer and give of ourselves and give of our time and sacrifice time with our family and sacrifice time that we could have spent re-energizing or sleeping. So anyone out there who's running for trustee, because there's 5 seats, 2 incumbents running, yeah, sometimes accountability is hard, and it requires longer meetings, and it requires persistence, and it requires sometimes fellow colleagues being upset because we ask too many questions.
So I don't know if that was aimed at me, but I'll say this, right? It's more than just about a trustee. We are supposed to be making it easier for the public to come in and participate in the process. This is not just about a trustee. Please don't get that confused. It's more than just about a trustee. This is not about making it easier for a trustee. We're supposed to be making it easier for the public to participate in this process. And what I'm saying is, if we having discussions about whatever it is, whether it's KPIs or what, it's the Stetson report, whatever it is, if we having that discussion at 11 o'clock at night, and then in the same breath we talk about equity, where's the equity at? We making it harder for the people we say we want to fight for to participate in the process. So don't get me wrong. Don't get me wrong, because I'm gonna ask my questions. I don't care who feathers I ruffle. As you see, I've made that clear since I've been here. But what I'm simply saying is, this policy will live on long after me, you, and whoever else is gone off of this board. So are we trying to make it so hard for those who are coming on to participate in the process? This has nothing to do with answering questions, accountability. This has nothing to do with that. What I'm talking about is, I want whoever comes and sit in any of these seats to be able to participate and be able to spend time with their family and not have to worry about, oh man, I'm walking in the door, it's 3 o'clock in the morning, I gotta turn around and get my kids up and go to school. I know each of us can speak on that. That's hard. And if I'm a person, maybe I have 2 jobs. Like, how can I do that? And I'm walking in the door at 2:30 and I got 2 jobs and still be able to function at my job and take care of my kids. What I'm saying is, don't make it so hard for those that are coming on to be able to participate in this process. I'm not talking about accountability, because I'm going to hold people accountable. What I'm talking about is having those who come on, not making it so hard for them to participate. That's what I'm talking about. Please don't confuse what I said, and I'm not fussing. This is just something I'm passionate about. Thank you.
Thank you, trustees. Are there, Trustee Ashe?
So I will say the things that I did say the other night. I do still have reservations about the shall and the may. And I think the reason that I sit here today is to say that even in the times where we didn't have shall in our policy, all of those things still ended up on the agenda and still came. And to me, that's the piece. And by restricting ourselves, we find ourselves in the world's thickest binder. We find ourselves in places, or a board finds themselves in a place where there isn't an option. And to me, that's where we come into our governance space, is as a group coming together and saying, here are the things I'm individually going to go in and ask those hard questions. I do not feel like I always have to ask the hard questions or have the difficult conversation on the dais. There's multiple ways to do that. And that sometimes that also is there's other ways to connect and allow other people to be a part of the process as well. So I am wanting to make this job tenable for the people that come behind us. I'm wanting to make it where I don't have to get texts on my phone during the meeting saying, I'm exhausted, y'all are not even on topic number 7, and I can't pay attention anymore, good night, let me know how it goes, even though I know that their important topic was getting ready to come up. So I think that there's absolutely 100%, it is our job to ask difficult questions, it is our job to hold people accountable, and I want to make sure that we can do those things, and I think we can, even having the word may. May doesn't mean it won't be on the agenda. It just means it's up for discussion, instead of being something that automatically goes on.
Thank you. Trustee Singh, then Trustee Foster.
So just to clarify, so it doesn't automatically go on. Once again, in fact, in our last governance meeting, I had brought up 2 agenda items. One was a discussion on the PPFT, and the other one was on, it was on an update on the CP&I and Equity Office. And I think through our discussion, we came to a conclusion of, hey, maybe we need to have a new option that's not necessarily at a board meeting, precisely for the reasons that my colleagues have just mentioned. They go too long, but they still would be great for a public discussion. So we're thinking maybe the board does like a community engagement kind of thing where it's live streamed or it's in person, and trustees who are interested in learning more about PPFT or who are interested in learning about, the cultural proficiency and inclusion work that we're doing, they can show up. They're not required to, which I think is great. And I would totally love for us to invent this new way for us to engage with the community. I'm not necessarily willing to sacrifice public discussion on things like police key performance indicators or the Stetson report. So I can, just to shorten, for the sake of shortening a meeting, like to me, like I would say like, well, maybe we would schedule those at another time. But it would still need to be public or whatever. But I think that's the beauty of having the governance committee still vet these, because I feel like when we talk in governance, it's not a hostile conversation when we're talking about, what to put on an agenda or where we want to put it. It's just a conversation, and I think we're all trying to do this in a way that's intentional and is causing the least harm. So, but at the same time, I have found that if it weren't for the shall thing in there, there's some stuff that would never come to light. The other thing I want to mention, that book, that binder, it's a good reminder of how late some of our meetings go. That meeting in particular, the June voting meeting, where there were no agenda items that were added by trustees. That was our budget approval meeting. And so that's why that was just a late meeting. Just so FYI, I just wanted to make that clear.
There's been other meetings that have been late.
Thank you. Trustee Foster?
So I hear two main points, and I find both incredibly important and compelling. And I think we're failing at both, or have almost failed at both. I think our meetings are way too long. And I think we need to heed Trustee Anderson's call and figure out how to make a shift. But I don't think it's a policy shift. I think it's a cultural shift. It's about a commitment to figuring it out. So I actually don't think, so Trustee, you might be mad at me on this one, I don't think shall or may is gonna get us there. So that's that piece. But at the same time, Trustee Anderson, I am 100%, I have been so glad that you've lifted this up and lifted it up over and over again, and I've been disappointed in myself and us that we haven't changed yet. And we haven't figured out how to make the change. Not that it's easy, but that's the thing about, we always talk about equity, equity, equity. This is something you say, Trustee Anderson. We always talk about equity, but here's the test of equity. When you hold up a mirror and put the equity lens on yourself and say, what do I want to keep doing that somebody's asking me to change? And are we gonna change it? And we haven't committed to changing it yet. So we have to put ourselves, our own feet to the fire, or whatever the saying is, I think, to commit to figuring out how to introduce a new layer of efficiency or effectiveness to this process so that we don't go on into the evening. But here's the other side, and now I'm gonna sound nerdy, all professory. We're not the first people to talk about tyranny of the majority and a lack of access to things getting on to an agenda. So de Tocqueville's talking, he wrote Democracy in America in 1835, saying, y'all Americans, you should read Democracy in America. He's like, you Americans are trippy. Look at the way you do all your stuff. And one of the things he talked about was the challenge or the threat of the tyranny of the majority, which exactly abounds to the idea of things not getting on an agenda. And it is absolutely the case. I happen to agree with the perspective that one of our areas, and this isn't an accusation of anybody or our current board or whoever, but one of the things we have to most guard against is that when somebody righteously has something that needs to be raised, that there's an opportunity to raise it. Y'all know who Emma Long was when she was on the city council, the lone woman on the city council for all those years, representing for the east side, representing for the poor, representing for all these folks. And they had to have a little gentleman's agreement. And she had to work all sorts of magic to get issues onto the table for Austin City Council. It shouldn't take magic and alchemy and brilliance for our most important issues to come up. So here's where I lean towards, we need to, wherever we can, protect the ensuring that things get on to the agenda. So somehow, so I guess with Trustee Anderson's, I like one of the amendments, and the other amendment, so I like the inclusion of the student outcomes piece, and then the shall or may, I lean towards the shall. But in either regard, the call I hear is that we gotta be better on both. So that's kind of where I am on this. And I am not lost on the irony that us having to have this discussion, because we haven't figured this out, is contributing to us being here. But I haven't been smart enough to figure out a better way to get there yet. But I am committed to us having shorter meetings. And not just selfishly, but it is for the greater good. But also so is having all the items come before the public.
So before I recognize you, Trustee Boswell, Trustee Foster, that's kind of the conversation we had in the governance committee and the commitment from the superintendent about how do we come up with different ways of what's the right word, integrating community engagement into the process without making our meetings go longer, and finding other opportunities to see how we might show that action in a different way. Or I should say, in addition to the ways that we're already doing it, so that we can get our work done and allow this other community engagement piece. And I think that to me is the biggest takeaway from our governance meeting was that iterative discussion that we're going to have. We're going to generate that. And part of the discussion was, well, should we have that in one of our board information meetings, or should we do that in the retreat? Because it might be one of the topics for the retreat. So I think we're going to see if the administration can find some best practices around there. And frankly, for all of us, if we know of other best practices, we should share those with the administration so we can have a good dialogue discussion in retreat. Trustee Bell?
Yes, thank you. First, I want to say, Trustee Foster, thank you for talking about the importance of making room for minority voice far more eloquently, historically, and professorially than I was planning to do. So thank you for taking care of that for me, way better than I would have taken care of it for myself. Second thing is I do support the amendment about the student achievement data. I'm good with that, and I do feel like with many steps and safety valves, having a place for that to land is important. That 3 voices represents a significant part of our community. That the interests of the administration and the board are not always perfectly aligned. That the interests of the community and the board are not always going to, the goals and the focus of the community and the board isn't always going to perfectly align, and that we do need to make room for that. And talking about, President Rodriguez, your point to having other outlets for conversation, there was something that we tested and tried when we were first, very long ago, talking about this policy that someone in the communications department very cleverly named Sounding Board, that was a public-facing conversation about something of importance to our community. And I would propose an amendment in this policy to make room for that when we're talking about the language here, a recommendation for another means of addressing the issue. And the list that we have provided in the policy, small group, written response, and or one-on-one conversations. Sometimes the public-facing nature is the point, but it doesn't have to be in a board meeting. Maybe adding a 4th option in writing there, which gives us yet another outlet, yet another off-ramp before we put it on the agenda, and still keeping shall for 3 if after all of those options, 3 people still want it.
So let me just, a point of clarification for governance purposes. One, the amendment around adding the language around outcomes was accepted by the author of the motion. So that's already in. So there's no need to, like, you can say that you're supportive of it, but it's already in there. I think the second one is the motion to change shall to may is on the floor right now, and we're in discussion around that. I think once that vote happens, if you'd like to make a friendly amendment that the author would take around the 4th item, and if they don't, then you can make a motion to it, and then we'll get to the final vote. And I think one of the things, Trustee, just to point out, this is about our actions more than it is about the policy itself. This is what's the right word, Arthur? Progress in action, or I can't remember the right term to say that this is always moving and changing based on a work in progress. Thank you. A work in progress. See, it might be getting a little late tonight, but a work in progress. So that's where we are. And so any other comments on the motion to change from shall to may? So if not, I have a motion by trustee Anderson, seconded by trustee Ashe, to change the wording from shall to may. All those in favor of changing it to may, raise your hand, raise your right hand. All those opposed, wait, all those for are 1, 2, 3, and all those for it. No, all those against it. Yes, sorry. 3, 4. And I'm voting for it, which makes it 5 to
4 to 4. Yes, it's right here.
yeah, 4 to 4. So what is that? Let me just clarify.
No
this.
action, it doesn't pass.
No.
Wait.
It was just Ashley,
It was,
Anderson, and Zapata.
there was 3 for the motion, 4 against the motion, and then me.
You were 5 for it.
I'm 5. I'm
Yeah,
5. I'm
so it's
4.
5 to
Yeah.
3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
5 to 3. Yeah,
I'm
sorry.
The way you said it, I misunderstood.
Yeah, sorry. I just want to make sure.
Okay.
Okay, so the
Yes, you're
motion
good.
fails 5 to 3. So now we're back to the original motion. And trustee Boswell, would you like to propose an amendment to the?
Yes, I would love to propose a friendly amendment to each place where it says small group, comma, written response, comma, and/or one-on-one conversation, to amend it to read small group, comma, written response, comma, one-on-one conversation, comma, or public-facing discussion, or discussion open to the public.
Yeah, sorry, trustee Singh.
I'm good with that.
So trustees, any discussion on that amendment? I think the author can just can accept it, but yes, trustee Anderson.
So who will monitor that? Who gonna monitor that? How will we get the feedback back?
I think there's still, well, I think that's from my perspective, that's a placeholder for the discussion around the community engagement, because I think we do need the administration to kind of help us with that. That's something that we're gonna have to work out with the administration, what that particularly looks like. 'Cause it
I'm
can have
happy
so
to
many
withdraw
different
my
ways.
motion and just move forward with this as it is, in the interest of finally getting this through.
Yeah.
And we can discuss that in
Yeah,
another meeting.
and then we can do that in the retreat. But duly noted, yeah, okay. All right, so having a motion by trustee Singh and a second by trustee Zapata to approve agenda item 14.1 as amended with the friendly amendment. All those in favor, please raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All those against? So the motion passes 5 to 3. You're against the motion?
Yeah, but I had seconded, it doesn't matter.
No, right? I'm looking at our
It
council.
doesn't matter. If your vote can still be against it, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if you heard what trustee Foster said, and our council said the same thing. You can second a motion to bring it up for discussion, but doesn't mean you have to vote. You vote, doesn't, just because you second it, doesn't mean you have to vote for it. So you're good. We will now move to items for separate vote. Trustee Singh, do we have a motion to approve item 15.1?
Yes.
I'm sorry? Because we don't have a.
Are you
Okay.
saying that, oh, okay, I could do 1 through 3, 15.1 through 15.3 altogether? Okay.
Yes.
Great. So yes, I move we approve item 15.1 approval of an easement at Blazier Elementary School to provide access for Austin Energy. 15.2, City of Austin Victory Tutorial Program Contract. And 15.3, the 2022-23 interlocal agreement with the City of Austin for Community School Coordinator Program.
Is there a second?
Second.
So having a motion by trustee Singh to approve agenda items 15.1 to 15.3, all those in favor, please, having a second by trustee Zapata, is there any discussion on these items? Okay, so let me just repeat that. Having a motion by Secretary Singh and a second by trustee Zapata to approve agenda items 15.1 to 15.3, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. The motion passes by all those on the, trustee Zapata, did you raise your hand?
Yes, I
Yeah,
did.
the motion passes. Trustee Singh, do we have a motion to approve agenda item 15.4?
Yes, I move we approve item 15.4, approval of an interlocal agreement between the University of Texas at Austin and Austin AISD for the on-ramps program.
Is there a second?
Second.
Trustees, is there any discussion on this item? Having a motion by Secretary Singh and a second by trustee Zapata to approve agenda items 15.4, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those against, all those abstaining, the motion passes 7-0-1, showing trustee Foster abstaining. Trustee Singh, do I have a motion to approve agenda item 15.5?
Yes. I move we approve item 15.5, the 2022-23 renewal of the interlocal agreement with the University of Texas for Literacy First.
Is there a second?
Second.
Trustees, is there any discussion on this item? Having a motion by Secretary Singh and a second by trustee Zapata to approve agenda item 15.5, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those against, all those abstaining, the motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed, and showing trustee Foster abstaining. Trustee Singh, do we have a motion to approve agenda item 15.6?
Why, yes. I move we approve item 15.6, approval of an interlocal cooperation contract for business training for hubs, 23 ILA 020.
Is there a second?
Second.
So trustees, is there any discussion on this item? Having a motion by Secretary Singh and a second by trustee Anderson to approve agenda item 15.6, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those, all those,
I think the motion passes.
Oh, that's with UT?
so let me just do that one more time. Having a motion by Secretary Singh and a second by trustee Anderson to approve agenda item 15.6, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. All those opposed, all those abstaining. So the motion passes 7 in favor, 0 opposed, and showing trustee Foster abstaining. Trustees, we will now recess the open meeting at 9:57 PM and move to executive session pursuant to Texas Government Code Sections 551.074, 551.072, 551.073, 551.087, 551.076, and 551.071. For our viewers at home, this concludes our live broadcast. When we are finished with the executive session, we will briefly return to open session to formally adjourn the meeting. The adjournment will be recorded and be included in all replays of tonight's meeting. So thank you for joining us and have a good evening. We will now recess the open meeting at 11:58 PM and move to, no, sorry, I'm sorry. We start all over again. We will now reconvene the open meeting at 11:58 PM. Trustee Anderson, do I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having a motion by trustee Anderson and a second by trustee Ashe to adjourn, all those in favor, please raise your right hand. And the motion passes by all those on the dais. The meeting is now adjourned at 11:59 PM. Thank you.